Good afternoon. Welcome to this special City Council meeting for March 29th, 2022. Items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. Two or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item on the agenda may be removed or related discussion may be delayed at any time. I'll call the meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, could we have confirmation of the agenda and roll call?
Thank you. Yes, the agenda was posted in accordance with open meeting law and all members are present.
Thank you. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll open our initial public comment period. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. Each person will have up to 5 minutes to speak. As always, we ask people to be civil and concise in their comments. Is there anyone present in chambers that would like to speak during the initial public comment period? All right. Anyone who wishes to call in, the phone line is available. The number 702-589-9629. Again, this is the initial public comment period for the special City Council meeting. This is the initial public comment period for the special City Council meeting. Anyone wishing to call, the number 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, were there any emails received for the initial public comment?
No comments were received.
Thank you. Hearing no one for public comment, we will close the public comment period. This meeting is primarily focused on evaluations for the appointed city officials, city manager, city attorney, and city clerk. We do have Jeffrey Winchester present here. Mr. Winchester's with the law firm of Fisher Phillips and was very much involved in the development of these contracts. He would be available for any questions anyone may have on that. We will begin with Madam City Attorney and her presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Brittany Walker, your City Attorney, here to present an overview of my performance since I was appointed acting in October of 2020. So as I just stated, I was appointed acting City Attorney on October 21st, 2020. I was appointed that afternoon and I went straight to work and worked the remainder of the day. There was a recruitment and interview process that I participated in. Ultimately, after an extensive search and interview process, the City Council appointed me City Attorney on May 19th, 2021. And pictured here is my swearing in with Nevada Supreme Court Justice Abby Silver. She is also a former Boulder City Eagle, and so she was excited to swear me, and I clerked for her when she was at the Court of Appeals. So just a brief overview of my department. It's myself, a paralegal, and our contract prosecutor, Mr. Gary Booker. He's been retained by the city since, I believe, 2005, and he is the prosecutor for our city ordinances. I do oversee his work. Pursuant to Section 15 of the Boulder City Charter, I am charged with acting as legal advisor to the City Council on all other city officers, drafting and reviewing all contracts and other legal documents or instruments as requested by the council or city manager, prosecuting all violations of city ordinances. In addition to the city charter, as a member of the state bar, I'm also bound to follow the Nevada rules of professional conduct, and I thought that they would be helpful in just explaining to you the role of an attorney and what principles I'm guided by as a requirement for my membership as a state bar member. The preamble to the Nevada rules of professional conduct read, a lawyer as a member of the legal profession is representative of clients, an officer of the legal system, and a public citizen having special responsibility for the quality of justice. My representational functions include being an advisor, a counselor, and an advocate. Rule point 1, it requires competence. A lawyer shall provide competent representation, and which requires the legal knowledge, skill, thoroughness, and preparation reasonably necessary for the representation. For scope of representation and allocation of authority, a lawyer shall abide by a client's decision concerning objectives of the representation and as required by these rules, and I shall consult with the client the means which their objectives are to be achieved. Rule 1.3 is diligence. A lawyer shall act with reasonable diligence and promptness in representing a client. And Rule 1.4 is my duty of communication. A very important duty. I'm required to promptly inform you of all decisions or circumstances which your consent is required, consult with you about how certain objectives are to be accomplished, keep you reasonably informed, and promptly comply with requests for information. In addition, there is the duty of confidentiality. A lawyer shall not reveal information relating to the representation of a client unless the client gives informed consent or the disclosure is impliedly authorized to carry out the representation. There are a number of other exceptions, but they typically wouldn't apply to general representation. Rule 1.7 governs conflicts of interest, and Rule 1.13, organization as a client, which is applicable here. Here, while I'm a legal advisor to the mayor and city council, the city is ultimately my client, and so I represent the city acting through its duly authorized constituents, the mayor and city council. Rule 2.1, advisor. I'm to render independent professional judgment and candid advice. In doing that, I can also refer to moral, economic, social, and political factors, not just legal. I'm also required to only bring or defend meritorious claims and contentions. And I have also a duty to expedite litigation. This slide is a handout for you. I inadvertently didn't include it in the one that was uploaded. This just gives you a little view of how the budget has decreased slightly over the years. In 2019, it was around $467,000. For fiscal year 2023, the budget, which will be presented to you later in April, but currently it's budgeted at $386,000. So roughly a savings of nearly $100,000 for my department's budget. As your city attorney, I also manage litigation and claims. As the city, we do get sued. Government gets sued quite often. We're considered a deep pocket. So if there's any theory of liability for a government, it is common that we would get pulled in. Pool Pact covers a lot of these claims, things like personal injury. So if city employee is involved in a car accident, Pool Pact covers that, provides us outside counsel to represent us in our interests. And we also have various property damage claims, things like at our golf course, if a house gets damaged by a golf ball or something like that, someone might submit a claim. That's an example. We also, when Pool Pact does not cover a claim, we will retain outside counsel for other litigation matters. Currently, we have 5 cases that were initiated in 2019, 2020, before I was appointed, that we had already retained outside counsel for. Since I came on board, I've attempted settlement on all these cases. I'm happy to report 2 cases are resolved, and we expect resolution on the other 3 early this year late this year or early next year. Hopefully, a third will be resolved here shortly. In addition, I'm your legal advisor and counselor. So I provide legal advice not only to the mayor and city council and the city clerk and city manager, but also to all of our departments. I receive a request from one of our departments for legal advice on an issue at least 1 to 2 times a day. I want to highlight for you some of what those requests are and some of what I've been involved in. For mayor and city council, a large part of my responsibility is ethics questions. Whenever a matter comes before you that could involve a potential conflict of interest as defined in NRS 281A, I'm here to counsel and advise you as to whether you need to disclose and possibly abstain. There are circumstances in which you wouldn't be able to participate in a discussion if it arises to that level. And there is a safe harbor in the ethics rules that if you rely on my advice in choosing to abstain or not abstain, there is protection for you if ultimately there is a violation. I also hold litigation briefings frequently with the mayor and city council to brief you on how the status of our cases, any decisions that need to be made. We discuss, if we're discussing settlement, what possible options might be. Those are litigation briefings that I hold and keeping you up to date with anything legal affecting the city. I also do those via email sometimes. Answer mayor and council member questions. If there's legal questions that you have, reach out to me and I provide you that guidance. Working with the city clerk to ensure our agendas are clear and complete for open meeting law purposes and making sure that our meetings are conducted in accordance with open meeting law. I draft agenda items and staff reports and resolutions for mayor and city council for their individual requested items, as well as my own items. And I also review most of the resolutions that come before you from staff. I've written a few city attorney opinions when a particular item is coming before you that needs legal analysis before a decision can be made. I've provided those opinions. I draft ballot questions, also draft correspondence. City manager and city clerk, the city manager and I meet weekly so that we ensure to keep abreast of what's going on in the city and keep each other informed. I draft letters for the city manager if it implicates a legal issue. I provide that legal analysis for the letter. One of the big things I worked with Michael Mays on when he was acting city manager was the vaccination drawing. As you may remember, we held it to incentivize some of our citizens to get vaccinated. It was similar to the state's program. It seemed a pretty straightforward program, but actually a lot of legal analysis was needed before we could launch it. Our state constitution prohibits lotteries, and our city charter also prohibits gaming. And so we're unique in that. We're one of the only 2 jurisdictions in Nevada that does. And so it did require particular legal analysis to ensure that the vaccination drawing was not a lottery or gaming. And ultimately, and so what I did was I reached out to the governor's office because they had to have a similar legal analysis for their state program. And they had an AG opinion analyzing whether it was a lottery for the Nevada Constitution purposes. And similarly, it's a similar analysis for whether it's gaming, essentially because an individual isn't placing a bet or isn't giving anything of value to participate in the vaccination drawing. We ultimately concluded that it wasn't gaming or a lottery. But that was something that I worked on so to ensure that we didn't have any legal issues in carrying that program out. With the city clerk, again, I mentioned we collaborate to ensure that meetings are conducted in accordance with open meeting law. I also review public records requests. There are certain types of information that are confidential under NRS 239 as well as in case law. And so to the extent we always produce a record, if there is confidential information, we might redact it, or if it's privileged, we are required to provide a privilege log. So that's essentially a table explaining why what the document is and why it's privileged. Moving on. The departments, I also provide a lot of legal assistance to. As I mentioned, these are some highlights of each of the departments, different legal projects I've worked on, legal opinions on lease interpretations. All the hangar leases that we have out at the airport are all different. And so they all have their own particular terms. We have a group of them that are expiring in 2023. We're required to notify them that the lease is expiring. So assisted the airport manager in drafting those notice forms, making sure, again, because there were 3 different leases and each lease had different terms, that we included the correct terms with each letter, and advised them of that the hangar would be inspected, and so that we'd ensure that it was kept up in accordance with the lease terms. Also revised our lease transfer and assignment forms. Drafted a sublease consent form, which was super helpful because our subleases, while we have the choice to approve them or not, we don't necessarily dictate what's in the terms of the subleases for an FPO if they sublease their facility. So it just as if it doesn't conflict with the master lease. And so the sublease consent form was really important because it notified the sublessee that they were still bound to the master lease, and as well as had to comply with airport rules and regulations, and it clarified that if the sublessee breached, that we could hold them accountable. We could also hold the lessee accountable if the sublessee breached. So that consent form is required to be signed by all the parties, so everybody's aware of what their obligations are. The fuel standards also were, I worked with the airport manager and airport staff to draft. They went through multiple drafts, and we held a working group with the airport tenants on the fuel standards, received their feedback, and incorporated their points. Parks and Recreation, the golf maintenance agreements and standards. As you're aware, we recently ordered a new contract to Turf Tech for our golf maintenance. Turf Tech has been the company who has maintained our golf courses for a number of years. But the contract had expired, and so we did an RFP for a new contract and selected Turf Tech again. But the original contract hadn't really been updated with what our current practices were. So I held a working group with Andy Schaefer Golf, with Sergio with Public Works, who oversees the maintenance with the golf course, as well as Parks and Rec staff, to look at our golf maintenance standards and say, well, what are we really doing now, and what do we need to change? And so we held that workshop. We changed those standards to match what current practices were. And then when the contract and standards were done, which I drafted the contract as well and made it particular to golf maintenance services, we held a workshop with Turf Tech and got their input as well before the final contract and maintenance standards were brought to council. I also drafted a new facility use agreement for when individuals rent our softball fields and things like that. Finance, I provide legal advice or opinion upon request. Business licenses under finance, I frequently will have discussions with Brady just on any enforcement issues or things like that, and discuss just various business license issues and provide guidance, especially if we're considering administrative action. It's important that the business licensees have a hearing, a notice and a hearing, and an opportunity if enforcement action is going to be taken. Community development, legal interpretation of ordinance and state law. A recent example would be Track 350. As you know, we awarded that to Toll Brothers, and they're right now in the process of carrying out that land sale. They had asked whether they could get whether the code allowed them to get. There's 30 allotments per development. They were asking if there were 2 different developments, if they could get additional. I explained to them that no, 30 is the max, because the way our ordinance is written, it hinges on ownership, and so there's 30 under our growth ordinance. It's 30 per development. Explain that to them. Municipal courts, I review all their contracts. Judge Miller will contact me and have me take a look at some of the contracts they enter into. An example, we had an agreement with PAC Coalition that was a reimbursement agreement, so we were to be reimbursed $1,500 just for helping. They assisted us with some drug court graduation events and things like that. So their agreement was really just not written for a government entity. So I went ahead and just drafted a new agreement for them to sign that was more in line with what a government contract would be for these services. The police, one of the largest projects, and before I went on leave, we worked on renegotiating the Boulder City conservation easement patrol services contract. So we, as you may know, there's the Boulder City conservation easement that's granted to the county, and the county's required under the interlocal agreement to provide patrol services. So they're required to have police out there surveying the land and just making sure that no illegal activity is taking place. Well, Chief Shea brought it to my attention that this agreement was costing a lot more money than we were getting from the county. The county receives federal grants for the patrol services, and so we wanted to work with the county and figure out a way to make it so that this agreement wasn't costing us money, and that it was meeting our needs, because the contract also just didn't comport with current practices. We were met with a lot of resistance at first. I'm not sure where the communication broke down, but the county was initially very resistant to wanting to renegotiate this contract. So we held several negotiation sessions with them. I redirected to the contract and redirected them, explaining that we were looking to find a way for middle ground, and ultimately got them to agree to a short-term extension while we renegotiated the agreement, which will be coming before you later this year. And so and in that interim time, Chief Shea brought out county representatives here to look at the patrol services that we were providing, to understand what services we were providing, what the conditions were like, what our officers needed, and since then our relationship has improved immensely. It was a really great opportunity to build rapport with the county and work together to find a contract that met both of our needs. And so I was really excited to help with that. I also provide the police and fire public records request advice. Each of them have different laws that provide confidentiality for certain records. And the fire example would be medical information. They are a HIPAA covered provider. So a lot of times we'll get requests for medical information, usually from like personal injury attorneys. So you just have to make sure that they have the proper consents before any of that's released. So if there's any questions, sometimes I'll get a request from the fire department to review it. I helped fire with the citizen ride-along waiver so that citizens could have an opportunity to do the fire ride-along. A big project I was excited to be of service for was the COVID vaccination waiver and HIPAA disclosure. When we launched the vaccination program and the fire department carried that out, Will called me and he said, "Brittany, I need a COVID vaccination waiver and a HIPAA disclosure form." And I said, "Okay, when do you need it by?" And he said, "Today." And luckily, I had practiced some healthcare law while I was at Holland and Hart, and I knew exactly what was needed. Very familiar with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So I knew exactly what was needed in that disclosure form and was able to get both of those drafted and uploaded into Google Forms so that we could launch that vaccination program and get everybody situated. So I was really happy to be a part of that. Boulder City Cares program, you may have heard of it. That's the ambulance program that allows you to pay a fee and you get a certain number of ambulance rides. So I helped review that and ensure there were no legal issues. And then utilities, currently helping Joe with a couple of different contracts and that we're working on. So contracts in general, that's a huge part of my role here as city attorney. I would say the large majority of what I do is transactional work rather than litigation. As you know, Boulder City has 208 square miles of land, and we lease a lot of that land to different entities, a lot of solar developers. And I like to say that with great land comes great liability. And so it's important that we have really strong contracts for these leases and various items because we want to ensure that the city is well protected. So when I came on board, and we recently retained the law firm of Sklar Williams, and they're helping us update our solar lease form to bolster the indemnification provisions. I had them draft a form easement agreement for us to use so that has terms that protect the city, making sure we retain ownership of improvements. The improvements are being built on city land, and so things like that were really important. I also just review all contracts on behalf of the city. So any of the contracts that come before you or that we enter into, I review. Total, I've reviewed 231 to date. These are general purchasing, public works, interlocals. A lot of them are form agreements that we just tailored to the particular service. But some are just very different or different things the vendors want us to enter into, just making sure that they have terms that protect us. Prosecution, my office provides timely and just prosecution of those accused of misdemeanor, criminal, and traffic violations. Our philosophy is to fix the problem, not seek convictions. As you know, a hallmark of the municipal court is the recovery court program. I assist in that program by referring, in consultation with Gary, certain individuals who we think that are going to be successful for that recovery court program. And get these individuals with substance abuse issues help. This program has immense community support, and I would say is one of the most successful in the state. And so I'm really happy that my office is involved in that. Ordinance drafting and review. When I first started, I drafted and hosted a ordinance and resolution drafting training. It was based off of a ordinance drafting manual that's published by the Carson City Attorney's Office. I thought that was very helpful to ensure consistency and encourage. A lot of our ordinances are first drafted by departments before they're brought to you, the ones that you see. So just ensuring that they had that knowledge so that they drafted these things consistently. Updates that I've completed since I've been here, the secondhand business license dealer clarification. As I mentioned to you, as you know, we had a loophole in our law essentially that we cleared up, and now if you're engaging in secondhand dealing, you are required to have the appropriate license and keep the appropriate records, etc. Ordinance updates in progress. The abatement ordinance is a big one that I'm working on. Our current abatement ordinance doesn't comply with NRS 268, so I have a draft that's being reviewed by staff, and we're working on that one. Historic preservation. I worked with the Historic Preservation Ad Hoc Committee to draft a historic preservation ordinance that was based off the State Preservation Historic Office model ordinance. And so I took that model ordinance and then drafted it in accordance with Boulder City code. And that draft went through multiple revisions before the ad hoc committee, and will also be coming back to you shortly with the ad hoc committee's recommendation. Modernization, I have, when I first started, we did not have access to any online legal research tools. And so I thought that was really important, because that's really the best way nowadays to stay up to speed on the latest cases, the latest laws affecting municipalities. It's not just state statutes or Nevada case law, but constitutional law affects government considerably, and that's constantly changing and evolving at the U.S. Supreme Court. So it's important that my office stay up to date on those decisions, so I can help guide the city in making those decisions. I also adopted 2 more robust services contracts. Our old services contracts were something like 7 pages long, so I looked at other cities and what their terms and tailored their terms to Boulder City's needs, and now it's a much more substantial contract that has specific provisions when there's delays, when there's default, when there's non-conforming work, what the party needs to do, and what our rights and obligations are. And having those spelled out in contracts, and having contracts that are drafted properly, is what keeps us out of the courtroom, because then the contract speaks to it, and there's no dispute. And so it really helps us save money in the long run by having better drafted contracts. The 2021 legislative session, during that legislative session, I provided reports on proposed bills before council, obtained council direction on how we were to proceed on that proposed legislation. And then I visited Carson City to communicate the city's position with legislators. We also hire a lobbyist, Lisa Foster, every year, and so she assists us with that as well. I also testified before legislative committees, testified in support of some funding for the Railroad Museum. I also worked on Assembly Bill 363. This bill required local governments in Southern Nevada to regulate short-term rentals, also known as Airbnbs. The downfall of this legislation was it prohibited jurisdictions from removing them altogether. So essentially it would have tied Boulder City's hands in deciding whether we want Airbnbs at all in our jurisdiction, and it would have required us to regulate them a certain way. We were the only rural jurisdiction, us and Mesquite were the only rural cities that were included. All the other rural cities in Nevada were carved out of the legislation, which I didn't feel was right, and so we worked on an amendment to, so now the bill only applies to the larger Southern Nevada cities. And I think that was really important, because it allowed Boulder City to keep its autonomy in deciding how it wants to regulate those types of facilities, or whether or not it wants to regulate them at all, or just prohibit them. And so it was important to have that ability still. And then goals for the upcoming year, we have the hangar leases expiring 2023. I'm working with the airport manager to bring some options to you for those leases in late April, early May. Again, I mentioned the Boulder City Conservation Easement contract. That's going to be coming before you. Updates to our municipal code. As you know, we just went out for an RFP for municipal code writing services to help assist us in carrying that out. One of the largest things I want to do with that is create a process for civil enforcement. Currently, our code does not have any mechanism for civil enforcement. It's pretty much all criminal penalties, and I think that in most city codes there is an ability for civil enforcement. Streamlining our prosecution practices. A lot of our forms are out of date, so I've been working with my new paralegal to update those. And then 2023 legislative session, I'll be working again with our lobbyists to just keep the council updated and apprised on what's going on during the 23 legislative session, getting direction if we want to have a say in any of the bills, et cetera. And then utilities, we do have a couple utilities projects that I'm working with Joe on that will also be coming. So with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. And just for some clarification on how today might go, should we ask our questions up front and then allow everybody to ask questions and then provide our comments after? Or?
Well, I think the process that has been recommended is each official will make their presentation. We'll have an opportunity to make questions or comments. We will then complete the evaluation forms, take a 15-minute recess while that information is tabulated, and then come back into session for further discussion.
Okay. So as far as your approach to the 2023 legislative session, are there areas you believe Boulder City needs to be proactive in as we come into that, or just more wait to see what comes up, similar to how there was a having to react right to the short-term rentals, as you said.
Yeah, great question. I currently don't have any recommendations on that as far as policy at this time. The city does have a BDR, and so we would agendize probably at a later time what that BDR should be before city council, and I'm sure staff will have some recommendations on things to be proactive on with that BDR. And at that time, we can also just have some. We can have our lobbyist Lisa Foster also do a legislative preview, which will explain what kind of legislation might be coming based on the results of the election and things like that, and that would help us position ourselves in the best way.
Great, thank you. And, I know many times when we have talked about, issues that I'm hearing from the public, a lot of times I get the bad news. Well, the state says we have to do it this way, even though it may feel like it really should be within our jurisdiction to make some of these decisions for ourselves. What can we do? I mean, obviously you have a lot of experience there at the legislative level. What can we do as a council to also better make sure that we are being heard beyond just our representatives at that are at the legislature? We have, the Assembly and State Senate, but what can we do as a council to also make sure that we're being heard?
Well, I think first and foremost is we as city staff keep you up to date on what legislation's there, and then making sure that myself or our lobbyist communicates what our position is on certain legislation. You're right in that we are very limited. We are a Dillon rule state. There are two types of states. There's home rule and then there's Dillon rule. Home rule states, municipalities and local jurisdictions tend to have a lot more flexibility and freedom in the things that they can regulate and what powers they have. As a Dillon rule state, we are a subsidiary of the state, so we only get what powers the state delegates to us. We do have the ability to regulate what's called matters of local concern. And the state did modify that in 2015. There used to be a presumption that if it wasn't spelled out in state law, that the city didn't have that power, essentially. They did change it to be a little bit broader, and so if it kind of falls in the umbrella of matter of local concern. But there's a lot of things that were preempted on if the state has a field of regulation already. So, unfortunately, cities in Nevada are just very limited in what policy areas they can be in.
And then should I go ahead and allow others to ask their questions at this time, or should I go ahead and make my comments as to the review of the work?
I think you're free to proceed as you wish.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So in my opinion, I believe that the Office of the City Attorney has seen the greatest transformation of any of the appointed offices in the short time that you have been in there. First and foremost are the improvements in communications. I mean, it really is outstanding. When asking for guidance on issues, I have been provided supporting materials, citing relevant cases, court decisions, and legal opinions. Legal briefings are far more robust than they ever have been, and you've done well to provide meaningful advice so that council can make informed decisions rather than leading us to decisions. Your familiarity, as I said, with state legislature, its functions, and many of its members has also proven to be invaluable. Above all else, though, I think is your respect, not only for the office itself, but for the city, its staff, and for council. You've earned praise from department heads that I've heard. You've also earned praise from county commissioners and state legislators. I believe we've been very fortunate to have someone so motivated and so professional in this office as you, and you are absolutely the right person at this time for this position. Areas of focus, the city attorney is obviously a demanding job, as you just presented to us. And it's even more, difficult when so much of that responsibility falls onto one's shoulders, right? There's that also can lead to the ability for there to be more errors or oversights. So I just think it's always important to be mindful of, what your limitations are and to continue to inform council of what those limits, might be as they come and arise, lest we develop an unrealistic expectations of what we can from you in your office, because you really do an outstanding job. And, we do need to know, if you are, limited in what your capabilities are because you are just one person. It's important that we know so that we're not pushing too much onto you so that we can, have the best outcome in the end. So that would really be my only advice of areas to focus. So.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I give you a tremendous amount of credit for hitting the ground running. I know you came in at a time when there seemed to be a bit of turmoil here in City Hall, having replaced several of our employees coming in on the heels of that. And I am incredibly impressed at the way you came in, ready to go, ready to take charge. I wanted to share my experience with you of going through the position of having to not only, I'm used to disclosing being the grant coordinator at Emergency Aid, but the situation with my husband being the treasurer at the Boulder City Rifle and Pistol Club. And I was very concerned about that. And not only did I ask you, for your opinion, but instead of just saying, this is my opinion, go with that, you said, I really think you need to contact the state and the Ethics Commission. And here's what you do. And I went that direction, and I filled out the forms, and I went with your suggestions and asked them to help me, and I think I had 20 minutes. It's like normally it's 45 days. And I was like, and I really need it now. And they were quite wonderful. And they sent me this long, rigorously detailed description of what I should, of what they think. And what they said is not only did I need to disclose, but I needed to abstain, recuse myself. But I didn't know how to phrase it. And so what I did was I came back to you, and you helped me draft a significant paragraph, because to me it's really important that if I do recuse myself, that people understand I'm not just being lazy. I'm not just taking it for granted that's what I should do, but you helped me do that. And I was so impressed with your willingness to say, I'm giving you my best opinion, but I really think you may want to take this to the state and get another opinion. And it takes the ability to put ego aside. And to me, that's really important in any position, is say, I'm going to put my ego aside, and even though I'm giving you my best opinion, I think somebody might be able to also do it. So that to me was an incredibly significant part of my looking at your performance. I'm very impressed. A lot of what you do, I don't see. A lot of what you do just ends up looking like a piece of paper. as opposed to the hours you work. I know there's been a question of, well, could you do this in-house? You know, could you rewrite all the ordinances in-house? Can you evaluate all of our utilities contracts in-house? And you made a comment that you could. It would be time-consuming. And I think if my only criticism out of everything was in terms of you being prepared for that question, saying, yes, each ordinance on average takes 50 hours to write and come back, you know, to have that, to know that question's coming. You know, we've spent a lot of money on outside legal fees since I've been here, but also since before. And I think that we look at those numbers. Are you going to make a comment or no?
I was just going to say thank you. I can definitely do that.
Yeah, to me it was not enough just to say, yes, I could do that, but it'll take a long time, but say, on average, this is what it takes. And that's why it's strongly recommended. And also, like the situation with the utility contracts, when you define what it was that they could do on top of what you could do, all I could think of is this could save us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's well worth it. But I'm just going to have to agree. I think you've done a fantastic job. Everything I've ever asked you for and question I've had, you've given me an extremely professional answer to, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Fox?
Communication, communication is key, and I think you've done a wonderful job at communicating, whether it's, settlements, litigations, stuff like that. You've done a wonderful job making yourself available to myself, and I'm sure to all the other council members. Everyone around you and the other departments, everyone seems to be very happy with you. I'm happy with you. I think the council and the city are very lucky to have you. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Thank you. First off, thank you for the scope of work that you did to show us what you do, which is kind of nice, right? We know what you do in regards to involving us, but there's things beyond that we don't see. So thank you so much for that. I will also comment in saying that you've been very receptive whenever I've had a question. You've always come and answered, even when I've come in and said, hey, that can't ever happen again. I need to be overinformed, not underinformed. You have always, since that point, overinformed me, and I've been very appreciative of that. That's helped my job, and I see it better. I do have one question just regarding the budget that I'm looking at. Does that include all the outside counsel that we hire, or is it inclusive, exclusive? How does that work?
No, it doesn't include outside counsel. So the outside counsel is paid from various different funds. So with the airport litigation, because that's an enterprise fund, those fees are paid for from the airport. Essentially the city is the entity that gets sued. It's not, my department's budget is more of what I have control over. I don't necessarily have control over if we get sued, but if we do, we typically retain outside counsel, and because the litigation process is so time consuming, it would be impossible for one person to represent the city. If it was something small or just something that you could file a motion to dismiss, I could do that. But if it's a complex commercial litigation, which a lot of these claims are, outside counsel is really a necessity. And even large cities, who have 40 staff attorneys, will hire outside counsel. But so anyway, to answer your question, the legal fees regarding those claims get paid out of the airport, and then for another claim, typically if it's a general fund claim, if Pool Pack doesn't cover it, it's then paid from the risk management fund. And then we also had another case that was settled that because that affected our utilities, which is another enterprise fund, those legal fees were paid out of utilities.
And then when we do outside counsel for like our codes or things like that, or for agreements, where does that come from?
Well, it just depends. Outside counsel provides legal advice on all types of things affecting the city. I'm not sure where the budget is going to budget for the municipal code services, but as far as for the Sklar Williams, I pay a portion of that out of my professional services budget. So that's what I've budgeted for in my professional services budget. Utilities also has a professional services budget. So where Sklar Williams is providing us legal advice with respect to utilities, utility contracts, things like that, they would be paid from that utilities professional services budget.
Great, thank you for the explanation. And
Yeah.
also, I've only been here a short amount of time. I know that the circumstance under which you came probably were a little overwhelming, and I know this is a new area of law for you, but I have also seen that you've worked very hard to be able to learn and to come up to speed. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. A couple of things that I have in mind is looking at over this past year or so. The circumstances that you came into the position obviously were difficult. My experience with the prior city attorney was, that things were simply not getting done, that things occurred. We were informed after the fact. We were never asked for input. So I appreciate the briefings that you have provided for us. I think the knowledge and skills that you developed working at the legislature and in other functions in your previous career have been extremely helpful. This is government. We have things that governments have to do, and you demonstrate a high level of knowledge on how those processes need to work. So I appreciate that as well. With the understanding of the position, one thing that I'm always concerned about is when do policies get determined and decided? And I believe that's the function of City Council. I think that having timely information provided to us, it allows us to make those policy determinations. Certainly there's been an enormous improvement since you've come into the position in letting us know what's out there. I would like to see even more of that, and I do understand that you do have limited time. I fully support the retention of outside counsel on things like a rewrite of the municipal code, the expectation that one single city attorney could handle a project like that. That's not realistic, and so I'm glad that the decision has been made to go outside of that. It seems that every time we have a discussion, it's that, that's outdated code, or this isn't allowed any longer. That's certainly no reflection on you, but, I think I've been told various things, like the last time this was done was in the 70s or 80s. When we hear these things that come back to us and say, oh, we haven't done that in 30 years, well, now's a good time to start. So I appreciate your recommendations on how we can go about doing that, and also your input on it. Your oversight and management of that process is essential to it being successful. And I think it's a misnomer to think that outside counsel was not previously employed by the city prior to you coming into the position. The prior city attorney was an outside counsel who was employed under contract for a few years before becoming the city attorney. There has always been the need for outside counsel. That gives us the opportunity to get experts in a particular field. The Sklar Williams firm for looking at our utilities contract is a perfect example of getting that specific knowledge and skill level, so that we do look at multi-million-dollar contracts and make sure that everything is there. That's, I think, essential for the success of the community. Something else that I would like to see, I do understand your time is limited. I know that, you are just now in the process of having to train a new staff member, but I would like to see the opportunity for us at least to be able to request things. If you do not have the time to do them, then we may need to look for other alternatives. Example being, there are particular resolutions or ordinances that I think we may need to address sooner than having a complete rewrite of the code. And, rather than saying, well, we can't do anything right now, we're just going to have to wait, to be able to look for other alternatives, whether, again, it's outside counsel. I think, we need to make that determination as a council as to whether we need that type of additional assistance or not. You had mentioned during your presentation the movement towards civil enforcement of some items. That's been directed by the state legislature to do. My understanding of what the legislature did, that's primarily with traffic offenses. And obviously that is a bulk of what our municipal court handles now. And the court has already, Judge Miller has already informed us that he believes there'll be a need for a significant increase in the budget to be able to make that transition. I would like to see some reporting on, number and type of cases that go to the court. Obviously, it's up to the court on how those are handled, but what is the outcome of those cases once they go to the municipal court, to try and give us some idea of what it is we're looking at in this movement from criminal to civil. And I guess lastly, I would say that, I certainly understand the difficulties of you coming into this position. I think you have handled it very well. I think you've grown very quickly into the position, but not just grown into it. You had a background before you got here, and that's been clear. I mentioned earlier your experience in legislative areas. I think you've done a fine job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one question.
Councilmember Bridges?
Thank you. I do have a question, and it's one of those generic, kind of employment questions. What do you need? What would make what you get to do every day easier, better? If you had more some X, then it would be easier to do my job. I'm just curious, and it's certainly not necessarily a budget question or a resource question, but what would be helpful? Do you say, gee, this is awesome, I have the best job because I have everything I need?
I think there's always needs and room for improvement, and I think anybody has room for improvement. This is helpful, having feedback from City Council and maybe more opportunities to have these discussions and getting that feedback, whether it's when we have litigation briefings or things like that. I do think the communication is valuable. As far as what I need just daily to perform my job, going out for the law firm with Sklar Williams, I thought was really something the city needed, and I appreciate the City Council doing that. In general, I love my job. I come to work every day. There's a new challenge. I enjoy helping everyone. I enjoy being a part of a solution. It's so rewarding to be able to help solve a problem. I love everyone that works here, that I work with. We have such a great staff, dedicated, hardworking. They do multiple jobs, most of them, and they're happy to do it. So it's a wonderful place to work.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. We will now complete our evaluation forms, and tell you what, why don't we'll just, we're not going to be doing any business other than completing these. Can we do that during a recess, or do we need to stay in open session? Okay, I know you're going to need a few minutes. We're going to need a few minutes. So let's say we will reconvene at 2:25. That will give us 25 minutes. All right, we're in recess until 3:25. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. Madam City Clerk, are we?
We're recording.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Bolt, thank you for doing the calculations on this. Any other questions or comments from members of council?
I have a question of procedure in terms of contract and salary. At what point do we talk about, I know these items were agendized, but at what point do we talk about that after the entire process of all three, or do we talk about that?
I think that's the point we're at now, Mr.
Okay.
Bolt.
I'd agree. It really, whatever process you see fit, and it seems like this would be an appropriate time to have those discussions.
All right. In reviewing the evaluations that Mr. Bolt has compiled, the scoring from the council altogether is somewhere in the range or in the proximity on a scale of 1 to 5, around 4. So that in our scoring system is above average. The contract does have a provision in it for annual increases of up to 6%. Is that correct, Mr. Winchester?
That is correct.
Okay. In this circumstance, we know that inflation has run extremely high during this past year and probably seems to as well. Although that's not specified in the contract as far as what salary increases are dependent on, I see any proposed increase being a combination of merit plus some type of cost of living factor. With that cap of 6% and inflation, at least for the last few months, running in the 7% or above range, and the scores that have been assigned for the work that Madam City Attorney has done, my recommendation would be for the full 6% increase in salary. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Okay, the 6% is the maximum in terms of a merit, but would there be no chance of going over that in terms of cost of living, or is 6% the maximum based on the contract?
Thank you for the question. My understanding is that this contract, and Bryce, correct me if I'm wrong, that the only mechanism for increasing the salary of the city attorney is pursuant to the merit increase.
Okay.
That is capped at 6%.
6%, okay.
Right.
Well, I agree with the 6%, but I also would like to see, if possible, a change, I
apologize. Please continue.
also a change in the contract. There is some wording in here I'm really uncomfortable with that does not match or reflect the same wording in the clerk or city manager in terms of reporting on vacation. This contract is different because it reports vacation, and that's oversight on the mayor or mayor pro tem. The other two contracts say city council, and my preference would be to have the three consistent, all being reporting to the city council as a whole in terms of vacation. Section 5, item number 2.
That is certainly something that the council, upon your suggestion, we can certainly make the change to the city attorney's contract if that's something the council approves.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Thank you. In talking about that and reporting to the council, my only concern is, and it's been a concern for a while, is that when you do come before us and you report your vacation or whatever, then everybody knows when you're on vacation, allowing everybody to know when you're gone from your house or other places. So that just seems to me, I don't know if there's a better way that we could do that where it doesn't announce to everyone in the city that they'll be gone on those dates.
So the way it's set up now, and obviously I'll yield to further comment, but you were absolutely right. The way it is set up now for the other two contracts is that by December 1st, the employee is to report to the city clerk the plans for vacation, and you're absolutely right, that then becomes a matter of public record. And the city council then has the authority to approve that vacation. I know that there has been a proposal we will discuss later, the possibility of a 2-day, I apologize, a 1 week notice in the event that 2 days or more are planned to be taken. So, and it would take the city council out of the approval process. So I know we're going to be talking about this later. Ms. Walker, was there something you wanted to add to that?
No, I just wanted to, if I was asked to, whether I'm amenable to the language, I'm happy to, yeah, I would be fine with the language that was proposed. I think it's item 3 handout. Mm-hmm.
There is one factor with regard to the city charter and absence of the city attorney from council meetings that has to be addressed in my view. We simply can't just change the city charter by an employment contract. And that provision is that the city attorney obtain either approval from the mayor or 3 members of the city council in order to be absent from a meeting. So, I'll leave the language up to others, but I do not believe the council has the power to amend the city charter through an employment agreement.
I'm fine with my contract as it is. I don't need any amendments.
So am I hearing that right now we're going to leave it as is for the next year for the city attorney contract?
Again, I'm certainly agreeable to making changes. However, those changes can't alter the city charter with regard to the requirements that are specific to actions of the city attorney and attendance at council meetings.
Right, and yes, I'm very familiar with those, and you're absolutely right. In that event, the city attorney would have to make arrangements for a replacement. I think I see them as slightly different issues. I think the question raised by Councilperson Bridges is an interesting one, as well as Councilwoman Jorgensen. You know, the idea that we're kind of, and this is really for you all to discuss, that we're making public people's vacation plans. And I don't know if that's an issue. Ms. Walker has just said that she's okay leaving it as is for her contract. So with that, I'll step out and let you discuss where you want to go on this particular issue for this particular contract.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Councilmember Adams?
I guess, and I would just ask this question of Ms. Walker. You have stated that you are comfortable with the contract being as is. Would you prefer that be the case, since, you know, we're talking about changing language kind of here on the spot? Do you believe that would be more appropriate?
I would prefer to just have my contract stay as it is.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, Councilmember Bridges, you brought the subject up. You've heard from Madam City Attorney. How would you like to proceed?
Okay, it's fine. I was only looking at it in terms of parity with the wording of approval or accepting of vacation time. As I also looked at it as two different items. One was not attending a council meeting, being vacant from a council meeting, versus taking vacation time. So I had, if the wording is fine, I just wanted to give the option, and again, if it's fine with you, it's fine with me. I just didn't know whether or not it might be better to have some parity in the language of reporting a vacation.
I didn't want to seem unappreciative. I definitely appreciate it, and I understand the concern. Mine is not, I don't have to report my plans like the city manager does, so it's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And so I'm comfortable with the language as it's written now. I don't have an issue with it, but I do appreciate it and understand what you're saying with regard to parity, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Okay, thank you. That's it. I withdraw.
Any other questions or comments regarding the contract, proposed salary increase? Councilmember Fox?
Yeah, I'm happy with the 6% increase.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Jorgensen?
Is there a way anywhere in there to separate a merit and a cost of living so that always a pay raise is not dependent upon merit if there is cost of living? So is there a way to put in, say, whatever, I know other employees get 2 to 3%, is that, yeah, it's 2 to 3% cost of living. If there's no language in there for that, is there a way to put that in and then also have the merit, and then truly that is merit-based, not cost of living and merit-based? So you can separate the two.
That amendment is certainly possible if that's the desire of the council. It's currently not in there, but if the council wants something like that, it certainly can debate, discuss, and decide on something like that.
I'm just thinking at this point, then, your cost of living is different with inflation or things of that nature. And if we include and say, yeah, we'll do 6% because cost of living or inflation is 7% right now, then it's not really merit-based that we're giving it. But I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying that that's not what we're discussing right now. We're discussing cost of living as opposed to merit-based, and this is completely merit-based. So I guess I would like to explore the option of having a cost of living clause in there and a merit-based.
You know, having participated in the development of this contract, I know from my perspective, appointed officials are separate from employees of the city. So employees of the city, some are under collective bargaining agreements, some are not. The intent of the contract is that these are appointed officials.
Right.
They're treated differently than employees. And the annual salary cap at 6% was put in there for a reason, and any factor can go into that decision by each individual council member. There are no guarantees within the contract because these are not collective bargaining. These are contracts between an appointed official and the city council as a body. Councilmember Jorgensen?
So then if I hear you correctly, there's no chance for appointed to have cost of living per se?
Again, that's not what I've stated. What I've said is the way the contracts were developed was that these were not intended to be contracts as we see for employees who are under collective bargaining agreements or other type of bargaining unit contracts. These are set up for professionals who are appointed by the city council and under direction of the city council. Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, so the question is, understanding that, can it, it sounds like if we all agreed, or some agreed, or none agreed, we could put in the contract that there could be up to, overlooking what goes on with other groups of employees within the city and dealing strictly with the appointed, that we could put in one or more contracts that up to 6% merit and up to 3%, 2%, and an up to for cost of living. We do have, we have had years where there's been relatively flat inflation, but we are currently in an environment where there is significant inflation, and by offering a 6% merit increase, they're almost making less than what they were making last year. So I would recommend adding a clause to it that up to a certain percentage for cost of living, because we, otherwise to me it seems like we're penalizing someone because we can't even give them a meritorious raise to match current inflation rates.
So Mike, for clarification, would that be a change to this contract that would be effective immediately, or something that we will draft and then present?
No, I would want it effective immediately because we're currently talking about salary increase. But that's my opinion, is that I think we would add it to this contract, this specific contract, and a not must have every year, but a up to, just like we phrased the merit increase.
Right, and the way, it currently reads is, the city council in its discretion consider
Correct.
a merit increase. We could certainly use that same language for in its discretion consider a cost of living.
Cost of
adjustment or
living
cost
up
of
to
living.
3%.
Correct, whatever the council decides.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I would just want to be sure that if we're talking about an immediate rewrite right now here and then taking action on that immediate rewrite, I would really prefer to see that language written down. I guess it was not something that came across my mind. I understand the importance of it. Costs are going up, and we want to make sure that everybody is properly compensated. But we also want to be sure that, inflation goes up, and then, we can also enter deflationary periods, and then, is that then need to be considered? I just think we do want to be careful, but, once we start tying this, I don't have an opposition to cost of living increases. It's just, I do think that, we want to be very clear about, what that looks like and why we are doing that and how that relates. Is it truly that this should be tied to what the cost of living is, or should it be, is it just an additional bonus? If it's up to for cost of living, then we're also saying, if they have done a poor job and we don't think that they are deserving of any type, and then saying not only are we not sure if you deserve a bonus based on your merit or a raise based on the merit, but we don't even believe that you deserve a raise based on the cost of living, which is outside of your control. And so, and that starts to get a little, for me, a moral issue. And so I'm not sure if I'm ready to just say there should be an automatic, cost of living increase, regardless. But then I also feel uncomfortable saying that we would also have the ability to, say you get nothing because we don't feel you've done a good enough job, even though that has nothing to do with the cost of living. That's just kind of where my head is at right now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Madam City Attorney, did you want to make any comment regarding the discussion? It is your contract.
Sure. Yeah. I defer to the will of council on this item.
Thank you. Again, Councilmember Bridges, if you wish to proceed with something, I believe now would be the time then.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to proceed. I guess my first thought is if we have a employee, an appointed, and we've evaluated them and we've decided that not only that they do not deserve any sort of merit increase, and I think we've got a problem more than whether or not we should also give them a cost of living increase. So that was my first thought on that. But again, even though it's not required or necessary, and we certainly are not a collective bargaining group, I would suggest 0 to 2% cost of living increase, because there may be 0, but at a period of inflation, I think that to at least match what it is that they were previously making in terms of spending power. So that would be my suggestion, is to also include up to 2% cost of living increase.
I believe you're going to need to form some type of motion in order for any action to occur.
Okay, I would make a motion that we include to this contract the line that consider, okay, it is in our discretion. In addition, it is in the council's discretion to consider a cost of living increase to employees' base salary of 0 to 2%. That's a motion.
Mr. Winchester, do you believe that language is sufficient for an employment contract?
Yes, I've seen language like that in employment contracts before.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor, or is there any discussion by anyone else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm opposed. Motion passes 4-1. We now then need to proceed with some type of formulation of potential increase here then, I suppose.
Correct, if that is now part of the contract.
Let's stop here then. Are there any other recommendations or suggestions or discussion for changes to the wording of the contract? I believe then we would be at a point where someone may make a motion for a potential adjustment to the salary.
I would make a motion to 2% increase.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think to Councilmember Adams' point earlier, since the merit increase on the record did include some discussion of inflation, I think it's the best course of action to revisit the merit increase and make it clear that is, the increases on merit alone, now that we have this new language involving cost of living.
Okay.
And then vote on those two things separately. So that it's very clear on the record what is what.
And I agree with you, and there had been no motion offered regarding the 6%. So I would look to Councilmember Bridges, if she has a motion regarding adjustments to compensation within the contract, that she base her motion on all factors that may be involved.
Understood.
Okay, I would like to rephrase my motion. And I've rethought the amount. Okay, I would like to make a motion, first of all, to offer, to consider, together, not one after another, the full 6% merit increase to the employee's current base salary, in addition to 1%. So it's the total of 7% to the total. So 6% merit to the current, plus an additional 1% to the current also.
And again, I would point out that there is no mention of merit versus any other type of increase in the contract. Again, Mr. Winchester, I hesitate to keep asking you because I just don't think the motion is properly formed in the fact that the contract does not call for increases stated to be merit increases. It's just an increase. So language has been added now regarding a cost of living increase.
So according to my notes.
And Mr. Mayor, we have a motion on the floor and no second.
Well, again, okay, let's go ahead. Anyone wishing to second the motion? Okay. There's no second for the motion. Again, Mr. Winchester, I'm not even certain this is something that you can weigh in on, but the proposed language, when looking at the contract does not call for merit increase. There's just a single potential for increase.
Let me correct you there, Mayor, respectfully. The language does say, beginning with the 2022 evaluation, on an annual basis thereafter, the City Council shall, in its discretion, consider a merit increase to employees' base salary.
I stand corrected. Thank you for pointing that out.
Absolutely. And if I understand correctly, there was a motion earlier to amend this contract to include a possible cost of living increase.
Of up to 2%.
From 0 to 2%. And if I got that wrong, please correct.
I believe that was the motion.
Okay.
Again, Councilmember Bridges, then, I apologize if you'd like to restate your motion.
Okay. You're giving me too much time to think in between. Okay, I would like to restate the motion I would like to make a motion to offer a merit increase to employees' base salary to 6%. And we'll go back to what I thought, and a increase of 2% cost of living increase. Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I am opposed. Motion is 4-1.
No, I didn't say aye. I was going to say opposed.
Okay. The motion carries 3-2. Councilmember Jorgensen and I are opposed.
Okay.
Mr. Winchester, I appreciate your input on that.
Absolutely. I will work with Bryce to add the language that the council has requested.
Thank you. All right, I believe then that concludes item number 1. We move to item number 2 for possible action, matters pertaining to performance annual performance evaluation of City Clerk Tammy McKay. Ms. McKay, are you ready for your presentation?
I am, Mayor. If you can just give me one moment, I need to switch over my Earth channel.
Thank you.
Noon, Mayor and Council. I'm Tammy McKay, your City Clerk. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to summarize my duties and responsibilities. I'm grateful and honored to work for the City of Boulder City and to serve the City Council and public. I'm looking forward to receiving feedback to improve my performance. Official duties. Pursuant to the Boulder City Charter, the City Clerk is charged with giving notice of meetings of Council, keeping the journal of the Council's proceedings, attending all meetings unless excused by the Council, attesting the Mayor's signature on official city documents, and keeping the city seal. Official duties pursuant to the Boulder City Municipal Code are as follows: charged with oversight of the city code, administration of municipal elections, oversight of the citywide records program, and secretary to the Redevelopment Agency, Planning Commission, Business License Liquor Board, and Charter Commission, and administer oaths of office. To provide a brief history of the past year, I was appointed acting city clerk on March 9th, 2021, during the 2021 municipal election. During that time, the deputy city clerk position was vacant, the city clerk assistant position had not been created, and the archives and records technician was out of the office for 5 weeks. This resulted in the inability to take any annual leave. Core services of the City Clerk's office. The majority of the City Clerk's duties are governed by Nevada revised statutes. The City Clerk's office is responsible for the preparation and posting of public meeting agendas, publishing the backup material, and preparing minutes for approval by the body as required in the open meeting law. As liaison between the City Council and public, I respond to phone calls, emails, and constituents. My focus is to listen and provide superior customer service by offering resolutions to reduce frustration. The City Clerk's office also supports the community as a passport acceptance facility by providing the public a convenient way to submit their passport applications. All 4 staff members are certified annually as acceptance agents. Public meetings. During the past year, there were 98 public meetings. 38 were City Council meetings, 4 redevelopment agency meetings, 56 committee and commission meetings. The City Clerk's office adapted over the last year, pushing through the pandemic and acclimating to the various changes in policies and procedures. This effort was possible with the help of staff working together from across our organization to maintain the common goal of being high-performing. Through the facilitation of virtual meetings, it allowed the business of the city to move forward in an open and transparent process. The public had the ability to submit written public comments, which were read into the record, and they could call in during live meetings. The virtual meeting process was so successful, it's been incorporated into a standard process. That, along with the meeting time change from 7 to 5 p.m., allow for greater public participation. There are very few weeks throughout the year that the City Clerk's office is not focused on meeting preparation. Thanks to the support of the Clark County Election Department and to city staff, the 2021 municipal election, which included preparing arguments in consultation with City Attorney Brittany Walker, was successful with 0 tabulation errors. My duties as Administrator of Elections include preparing the declaration of election, candidate filing, reviewing legal notices for publication, working closely with Clark County Election Department for early voting and Election Day sites, and serving on the certification board. Per NRS 295, the city clerk reviews all arguments for placement in sample ballots. And if a ballot question committee is not appointed, the city clerk is charged with preparing supporting and opposing arguments. Public records are defined by NRS 239. In general, the purpose of this chapter is to foster democratic principles by providing members of the public with prompt access to inspect or receive a copy of public books and records to the extent permitted by law. Requests for records are due not later than the end of the 5th business day unless provided a notice when it will be readily available. It also governs the approved schedules for records retention and disposal of our records. Because of the importance of public records, the city clerk's office provides annual in-person records training, and newly hired employees are required to watch a records training video prepared by the city clerk's office. City Council administrative support. Manage committee commission appointments, which includes recruiting and tracking committee terms. The mayor is appointed to the Civilian Military Council Board, and I serve as the treasurer. The CMC is a partnership between Nellis Air Force Base and every major phase of intercommunity living to maintain continuity of the working partnership between the military and civilian communities. As administrative supporter, I determine availability for meetings and workshops, draft agenda items, staff reports, resolutions, letters, proclamations, certificates, maintain calendars, and facilitate events such as the State of the City. Oversee the City Council's budget, order equipment and supplies, arrange training and travel plans, and process reimbursements. Most importantly, I believe my duty is to ensure information is provided to all 5 City Council members on matters of importance. 265 passports were processed, generating $11,150 to the general fund. Limited services were offered during the pandemic, and full service resumed in November. Professional organizations. I work closely with the Clark County Election Department and all Nevada Municipal Clerk Association members, which is comprised of clerks throughout Nevada. The NMCA working group collaborates frequently about legislation or other matters that may affect our offices. Promoting education and training is important to the overall functions of the city clerk's office. The city clerk assistant will earn her associate's degree in May and has enrolled in the IIMC program to earn a certified municipal clerk designation. The archives and records technician attends available training relevant to maintaining public records. The deputy city clerk and myself are master municipal clerks and certified public officials. We also attend the annual Municipal Clerks Institute to follow up on relevant training. We strive continually to seek ways to improve our education and training. At the request of RTC, we were also called upon to allow their agenda management team the opportunity to shadow our processes, which will take place in April. Accomplishments. I was appointed city clerk on August 11th, 2021. Reviewed the 2021 legislation and updated the city charter to comply with SB 287 related to aligning with even year elections. Implemented an email archiving system which aids with processing requests for email records. Established an email archiving policy that aligns with all of the jurisdictions in Clark County. Brought the Civilian Military Council account in compliance with Secretary of State and the IRS. I worked with the bank to change the signature authority and account from commercial to business. This was a very lengthy, time-consuming process. It began in September, involving more than 30 emails, numerous phone calls, meeting in person at Wells Fargo. and with a lot of help from the Vice President of Commercial Relationship Manager. Everything was finalized in February of this year. I completed 3 terms as Nevada Municipal Clerk Association Vice President, hired the Deputy City Clerk in July and City Clerk Assistant in November. With a full staff, numerous files have been scanned into the permanent repository, which are now accessible in electronic format to the public. After scanning in approximately 19,000 pages, the record storage room was reduced by 80 square feet to accommodate the newly constructed north entrance access to City Hall. Goals. My goal is to conduct a fair and accurate 2022 municipal election and promote residents to exercise their right to participate in the process. Implement PrimeGov agenda management system, which will involve a lot of staff time and dedication, but the end result will be rewarding to all agenda management users and especially to the public. Agendas, supporting material, minutes, video will be available in one portal, making it more user-friendly and accessible. One of the greatest features, in my opinion, is the ability to select an agenda item, and it will link them to that portion of the video. Enhance our public records portal by including links to individual departments for quicker routing and processing citizens' requests. Assist the police department to help create better public record workflows in Laserfish. Research and establish a text messaging policy. Work closely with the city attorney to update the city code. Review Nevada State Archives and review city records retention schedule as applicable, which is typically twice a year. Implement cross-training plan to ensure continuity of services. Partner with Nellis Air Force Base Executive Planning Committee to host the 75th anniversary of Aviation Nation. Also assist with the 2026 IIMC International Conference, which will take place in Reno. All members of the NMCA will assist in the planning process and provide assistance during the conference itself. And finally, partner with the NMCA as well regarding 2026 International Conference. In conclusion, I would like to read words written by the eminent political scientist, Professor William Bennett Monroe, in one of the first textbooks about municipal administration written in 1934. No other office in municipal service has so many contracts. It serves the mayor, the city council, city manager when there is one, and all administrative departments without exception. All of them call upon it almost daily for some service or information. Its work is not spectacular, but it demands versatility, alertness, accuracy, and no end of patience. The public does not realize how many loose ends of city administration this office pulls together. These words, written more than 80 years ago, are even more appropriate today and offer insight about the work of the city clerk's office. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as city clerk, and I'd like to take a minute just to introduce my staff who helps make all of this possible. So, come on up. So this is our archives and records technician, Tina Pickens. Couldn't do our work without her. And this is our newest hire, Bridget Rodriguez, and she is a very quick learner and an expert at passport services. So happy to have them both. And then the deputies over there, if you can focus on her, Stacy Brownfield, and she keeps me in check and keeps me on time. So I'm very appreciative for her. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I am so happy with the job you do, Tammy. I just have to tell you that it's wonderful when there are people who make your job easier, and you make my job easier. And it's just really important for me to say that. I know that if I ask you a question, I know I'm working on something, you know, and you're like, here's this, what do you need more of? What can I do to be helpful? When somebody comes to a job with a heart of service, and that's truly what I believe you show up with every day, it's just really obvious to me. I have no questions except probably the same one, which is, you know, what would you like more of? You know, what helps you do your job better?
Well, I can honestly say it's been done. The full-time position of the city clerk assistant has brought everything into place in the city clerk's office.
Wonderful.
Where we have the ability now to work on projects that just couldn't even be done in the past. So we're moving ahead, and I'm so
Great.
thankful.
But I just think the way that you do your job and your responsiveness to questions and, ability to sit down and talk about how things can be done and put together better and what I've needed personally in terms of more information on things. You've just been extremely responsive and helpful, and I want to thank you. I know this is not where you say well, it is sort of where you say thank you, but I really have nothing else to say except good job.
Thank you. I appreciate your kind words, and I appreciate that you notice that I really do love public service. I enjoy coming to my job every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's always important that we do recognize just how vital the duties of the city clerk's office is. I think many incorrectly assume that because the duties are clerical in nature, that they are somehow lesser, if you will. Absolutely, I think it's of equivalent importance as the role of city manager, city attorney. It is just so important to the function of our governance. You came into this position during a period of turmoil, obviously, which was difficult for all of us, council and staff. It's, you can't deny that. I did worry that with your long history, with the city, that it might make that transition, difficult. And I'm not going to say that it wasn't difficult, but what I will say is that you met that call with professionalism and with composure. And there's no doubt in my mind that when you were sworn in, that you were absolutely ready for the job at hand. Your institutional knowledge of the city, I think, is just it really is a great asset to all of us. You know so much about what has taken place in your office for just so many years back, not only just your office, but also at all the other department heads, because they all eventually funnel through you at one point, so that also has been a tremendous asset as well. That you were able to perform all of these duties, including the last election cycle with the limited staff. I think it really does speak to your capabilities. As far as areas of focus, I think you did speak, some of your cited goals are areas that I'm eager to see progress in, things like records retention and things of that nature. And additionally, how important to me accessibility is. And so I certainly would ask you to continue seeking out new ways that we can make our information and public records more accessible. I only know one small area of focus, but, as you interact with other city clerks and other organizations, anytime you hear of something that maybe we could adopt, definitely bring it to our attention so that we can consider it, because I think making, access to the information that's just so vital, for transparency efforts. Anytime we have an opportunity to increase that, we should definitely consider it and hopefully go forward with it. In establishing lines of communication with different service providers, like you did when we discussed, what would happen if we needed somebody who needed a sign language interpreter. Making sure that we have established those lines of communication so that when and if those services might be requested in the future, that we're not caught off guard, and so that we are ready and able to address that in a timely manner, so that those services can be hopefully rendered and give us that opportunity to move forward in that way. So those would be the areas that I think are great areas to focus on, and I really appreciate all the work you've done for us.
Thank you. I appreciate your words.
Thank you. Councilmember Fox?
You wear so many different hats. It's crazy, but nothing ever slows you down. And you're always quick to respond, always there to help. And I'm very thankful for the job that you do, Tammy. Thank you. You communicate properly, and it just helps, and it makes our life a lot easier. So just great job, and keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen?
Thank you. I think I've seen your job from a couple different perspectives. I did come get a passport, so I did see it from that perspective, just as a regular civilian before I got in. And then when I came into, I saw the official duties that you have to do with elections as I went through the process of that and what that entailed and how professional you were in distributing the information and helping us understand what it meant to do something of this nature. Also, since being in, having the opportunity with a little bit more in-depth look of how you interact with others, both when I'm in your office and I see someone come in for, how do I get this record? Your team and yourself, you are professional, you are helpful, and you provide the face of the city a lot of times for us, what people see. And I feel like that's what they see when they come in. And that's a well-run office, and it's appreciated. As far as your work goes in my direction or the direction of the council, you're on top of it. Your emails, you even keep me on top of it sometimes, which I appreciate, being new and understanding the process a little better. You help me to understand that process, which is very much appreciated. Making my learning curve a little less long is what I feel like, because you've given me that information. I truly do appreciate the job that you do for us as a city representative, and it's a personal for myself as serving. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You know, I do recall in our budget last year saying I felt there was that need to move that part-time position to full-time. I know you did even express a little hesitation about whether that was necessary. You know, it certainly, I believe, still believe, was necessary, but you certainly have made excellent use of that additional time and employee. Your years as the deputy city clerk are clear. You know the procedures. You know, there are always a lot of balls in the air in your office, and the problem is if one of those hits the ground, we're probably in trouble with somebody legally, or at least our residents don't have that same level of confidence, and I think we are able to give them that level of confidence because of the work that you and your staff do. There are still projects. I know, you know, we speak and things that need to be done, but having that additional staff and your knowledge of what needs to be done, I see those things finally starting to move ahead. There is a lot with our records retention system, and more importantly, the public's access to that information that I know you're working to improve. I think we need to improve that. You know, I don't know that there are many of our residents that you could say, oh, you can find that on the city website, and actually say, oh, yes, I've already found it. You know, my recommendation is that we continue to work towards where our residents can rapidly find records on our system. And I know you're working on that, but that, I think, is one of our biggest responsibilities to our citizens here, is they can look up any piece of information about their government that they may desire. With regard to accessibility, for other types of information, again, I know your staff is always helpful for people. I think that once we get the remodeling done, that will further improve. So I know you already have plans for that. With regard to policy decisions, you know, there's always going to be a line between what's a policy and what's an administrative decision. My view is that every administrative decision has to flow from a policy that's already been determined by City Council. You've done a good job in understanding where that is, but that always needs to be foremost in everyone's mind, I think, rather than, you know, decisions being made to say, well, here's the way we're going to do it. Those are decisions that the council has to have made previously to allow those types of things to flow out as far as administrative procedures that might be developed later on. and your ability to adapt to the COVID restrictions that we've been through over the last 2 years. I know that our technology was somewhat lagging, to be generous about it, but the adjustments were made. You know, we may be sticking a microphone on a phone speaker, but residents can call in and make their comments, and I appreciate the work you've done with regard to that very much. And lastly, I'll say with the Civilian Military Council work, that's an organization that's been in operation at Nellis Air Force Base since 1957. It's a critical part of Southern Nevada, having the largest tactical Air Force base in the country located here. And your facilitation of that organization, getting things straightened out, doing all those things, it's an important function not just for Boulder City, but for all of Southern Nevada. So I appreciate the work you've done on that as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Madam City Clerk, anything you would like to add?
Yes, I have before you today regarding my employment contract, a couple of recommended changes. And one is I'm at a place in my career, especially without being able to take annual leave last year, that I'm at the point where I'm going to lose time. So I'm requesting that a portion be included under Section 5, Vacation and Sick Leave, Number 2, Vacation, Section 5.2, that states, the employee's maximum accrual rate shall be 720 hours to reflect the same terms as a 20-year department head of the city. That is the max amount allowed at the City of Boulder City. And second is number 6, payout of vacation or sick leave during employment. I would like added, employee may participate in the annual leave buyback program on the same terms as department heads of the city. And if anybody has questions about what that program is, I'm happy to answer it.
I would appreciate an explanation of it.
Okay, so once a year, and it's not a guarantee, it's something that's decided by the city manager every year. Employees who have taken at least, it's either 40 or 80 hours, is it 80? 80 hours of annual leave throughout the year has a chance in November to buy back 40 hours of time. And so to me, I just think that would be beneficial to have the opportunity to buy back 40 hours because I just cannot catch up with my annual leave.
So I'm still not clear on how that would work then, that you're earning, what is it, up to 120 hours of leave, or you're just not taking the 80, or?
No, I earn a lot more than that.
Okay.
And do you know what my? Yeah. I know. Oh, it's sell back. Okay, but it's. I thought in the manual it said buyback program. So it's really a sell back program. So I could sell 40 hours of my time.
If I may, Your Honor, is this a good time?
Sure.
To chime in? Okay. So I have been consulted about this, and what's happening is because in the original contract with Ms. McKay, there's a provision that says that during employment, the employee is prohibited from cashing in or selling back any accrued vacation or sick time. What is possibly going to happen this year to Ms. McKay is she may hit a level where she will start to lose accrued vacation and sick time. So I think the spirit of this proposed amendment is to allow her to sell off or to sell back. If there's a program, she's absolutely right, you know, the program has to be approved by the city manager. That if she's in a situation where, but for selling back some of her accrued leave, she would lose it because of the cap, that she would like permission to participate in that sellback program. Or from the city's perspective, it's buyback. From the employee's perspective, it's sellback. So.
And that current policy is for up to 40 hours or for any number of hours?
Up to 40.
That's correct, Mayor. And this policy's been in place long before I arrived, and employees are able to sell back 40 hours if they have taken 80 hours throughout the year. It typically occurs around Black Friday, Christmas time, and it's paid out of the Compensated Absences Fund.
Thank you. Any other questions from council regarding that? I do have one other concern about this particular section, and that is going back to the notification to council of when leave is going to be exercised. The wording that I see here, and I don't know if it might be addressed elsewhere, but the intent, my intent previously has been that the council members have knowledge of when leave is going to occur. And I know you've been good about letting us know, but I don't see specific wording within this section that requests that. It refers to entry of the time into the personnel tracking system, but I don't see where there's a mention of prior notification to the council members.
Well, in the past, I did notify everybody by email, but per the charter, I'm required to be at every council meeting, so then I would have to be formally excused if it were during the council meeting.
And I appreciate that, and again, my concern is that it's not specific within the contract. And Mr. Winchester, if I've missed something, but I know that, that was certainly something that was a requirement, or at least a very essential desire of the prior council to make sure that the council was being informed when appointed officials were on leave.
And I do recall that, and I recall the circumstances that led to that concern. The way it's set up here is the clerk has to inform the city finance director. And so I think we've got a couple of options. One would be that the city finance director would then be required to inform the council. Or you could certainly require the city clerk to inform the council. This proposal is similar to the others I've seen, which has the 1 week. So it would be 1 week prior to taking that vacation. I do think that missing and I don't have it in front of me, but I do think that missing a council meeting would require a prior permission. So to me, that's a separate issue. This would be taking vacation that does not impact a city council meeting. So I certainly recall and understand the desire for council to be informed of vacations that are 2 days or more in length.
Madam City Clerk, do you have any thoughts on that? Again, based on what Mr. Winchester has just said, I would certainly be fine with once you have requested your leave, or to use that 1 week standard whenever practical. And I do understand there are times where it would not be practical to give 1 week, but that notification be provided to the city council members prior to the leave occurring.
Happy to do that. I basically do that now. I'll just forward my leave request, and I'm on record stating that I'll forward it to you. So I don't think it really needs to be in the contract. I always inform the council if I'm going to be gone. And that record's really easy for me to forward to you.
I appreciate that, but there's one thing about contracts, and that is that it's in writing. And I'm more comfortable with that based on not my experience with you by any means, but what had occurred in the past with previous appointed officials. I would just prefer to see it written into the contract, as Mr. Winchester had suggested, that notification be provided 1 week in advance, whenever practical. Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, thank you. In the line that says, employee shall, prior to using more than 2 consecutive vacation days, employee shall enter intended use of vacation time via established systems required of other employees and so on, and it says, but in no case shall the input into the tracking system and to the city council. So that would include the city council as part of the process, along with putting it in the tracking system. No later than 1 week prior to the first day of the scheduled vacation. So which would formally put the city council into the process.
And I would want to include the phrase, as practical, because there are situations that may come up where 1 week notice is not possible.
I'm fine with that language.
Again, Councilmember Bridges, then, do you want to restate as a motion what you had just prior stated?
Okay, should I add the highlight in yellow if that's part of the, would that be part of that motion, or would that be just that specific item?
Well, I think we have two different subjects here, but we can probably do it either as one or two, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, I would like to do it as one, but which do you think, Mr. Winchester, would be best?
No, that's certainly fine. If you want to do them as one, that's
Okay.
fine. And just to be clear, that this will end up being, like the prior, will end up being an amendment to the contract.
Okay, an amendment to the contract for this specific item, for Section 5, Item 2 and 6. And for Item 2 would be adding the highlighted item in yellow, the employee's maximum accrual rate shall be 720 hours to reflect the same terms as a 20-year department head of the city. The second would be, but in starting with, you got?
I apologize.
Or would it be best to do each individually?
Let's do each individual,
Okay.
because the language that you're talking about now, I suggest some tweaks to it to make it clearer.
Okay.
Not to change the substance at all, but to make the language clearer. So.
Okay, the first item would be let's see, I'm going to go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Starting in line 8 down, it says, as soon as practicable prior to using such vacation time, comma, but in no case shall the input into the tracking system and to the city council occur no later than 1 week prior to the first day of the scheduled vacation.
If we could have that as the motion, the first motion.
Yes, because
I'd
the word
appreciate it.
practicable is already in there.
Yes.
You're stating that as a motion?
Yes.
I will second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we have that one down,
Okay, so that's 5-0.
okay?
Okay.
Now, I believe then we need to address the request from Ms. McKay regarding the vacation buyback, sellback,
Yes.
exchange of remuneration.
So I would like to start with Section 5, Item 2, the highlighted language. I suggest wordsmithing it, changing it slightly as follows. The employee's maximum annual accrual rate, so I would suggest adding the word annual, shall be 720 hours to align with the vacation accrual rate of a 20-year department head of the city. And I can read that again, if you'd like.
Any questions or comments?
I just want to make sure that rephrasing serves the same purpose. Does it?
It does.
Okay.
So moved, as stated by Mr. Winchester.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And then we still have Section 6.
Right.
then.
Section 6, there's actually a slight correction to, I think, that was an unintended omission. And then I would like to clarify that this would kick in the event that there was going to be a loss of vacation. So that is a substantive suggested change. So let me read to you my suggested language. There shall be no payout of unused vacation or sick leave during employment. And I double checked, the original does say vacation or sick leave, so I think vacation was inadvertently omitted. Okay. Notwithstanding the foregoing, comma, employee may participate in the annual leave buyback program on the same terms as a department head of the city, comma, in the event non-participation would result in the loss of accrued unused vacation or sick leave, period.
Madam City Clerk?
I don't really understand the reason for that.
Then
It's different terms than city department heads.
And that certainly, I understand your point. What I was trying to do was make the language so that I think my concern from a legal, and it's solely a legal concern, was that the language in the original contract says there will be no buyback. And this would then make the two phrases or the two sentences make sense together. That there wouldn't be a contradiction, that this would modify the buyback to say you can buy back if there's going to be a loss. However, if the city clerk would like to propose that she be allowed to participate in the program, then we would want to delete that first sentence, because that would then create, in my mind, an internal inconsistency.
And it's my opinion that that was an unintended consequence in that contract. It's never been in any contract before, so I guess I don't understand your point.
Right. I can say it again. Maybe this will make it more clear. If the contract is going to allow for unfettered or unlimited participation in any buyback program, we should get rid of that first sentence that says there shall be payout, no payout. Just strike. Well, we certainly could strike the entire clause, and then it would then you could participate fully in any program.
And just for clarification,
Yeah.
so the city provides no payout of sick leave at all during employment.
Okay.
And then it's only up to 40 hours buyback possibility.
And that's why I left that
vacation
in there.
only. I see. So that was probably my misunderstanding then. I apologize. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Now
why I
see.
left that in there.
Got it. There shall be no payout of unused sick leave.
Right.
Got it. And then the idea would be as for vacation leave, employee may participate.
Sellback program.
All right. And so I think that's the question, is whether you wanted any kind of if you wanted any kind of a limit on the participation, or if it's if there's no limit on potential participation. And I have no opinion either way. It's your decision.
Well, it seems to address that, and, I'm very hesitant with any of these appointed official contracts to constantly relate back to practices for department heads. In this case, I believe it's appropriate, but I'm always leery about doing that because of the fact that these are appointed officials and not department heads. With regard to this, I think that there's, as stated, or as we have here, the change that's proposed, that seems to address the issue of this buyback for annual leave that may go unused.
Yep.
However, it's restricted only to that program.
Understood.
Anyone in disagreement with that? I would then make a motion to have subsection 6 here, as we have in front of us, payout of vacation or sick leave during employment. There shall be no payout of unused sick leave during employment. Employee may participate in the annual leave buyback program on the same terms as a department head of the city.
Do we need to add of accrued vacation just to be clear, or is it understood?
I would be fine saying of accrued vacation time.
Got it.
Don't we call it annual leave, not accrued vacation time? It's referred everywhere in the city as annual leave.
Well, but is that what it's referred to here? Because this section 5
Vacation.
is titled vacation and sick leave. So again, I think we run into problems when we start to conflate other employee understandings with these contracts for appointed officials.
Would it be more helpful to include the term of accrued vacation time, or would that confuse the matter, in your opinion?
Vacation and annual leave are essentially the same thing.
Right.
So whichever you prefer.
Right, the contract uses vacation. So just to be consistent with the contract, I'd prefer using vacation, but
I'm in agreement with that.
That's fine.
So I'll restate this, section 5, subsection 6, payout of vacation or sick leave during employment. There shall be no payout of unused sick leave during employment. Employee may participate in the annual vacation buyback program on the same terms as a department head of the city for vacation time that has accrued.
Is that second?
Are we okay with that
We're okay.
language?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, and Councilmember Bridges, you wish to second that?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any other changes? I dare you.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and again, these are important things that we needed to clear up. There's no question about that. Okay, any other questions or comments, Madam City Clerk?
I have none, but thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Bridges?
So could we talk about salary? Or is this where we?
We're actually going to do what we did previously, I
Oh, and
believe,
talk-
which is where we'll do our evaluations.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then we will have a discussion about that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Mr. Bolt, was the 25 minutes sufficient for the first contract?
We're getting more proficient as we go.
There we go. Okay, we'll warm up the calculators again. We will take a recess until 5:10 p.m. Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. We've had each individual evaluations have been tabulated now. Mr. Bolt, I believe you said the aggregate was somewhere around 4.2 or 4.3? 4.28. All right. Any questions or comments from council?
So, no, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Bridges.
Yeah, I would like to discuss this employees' base salary. The issue of base salary of 0% to 6%. I would like to recommend the 6% based on the tally. And I would also, as a separate issue, like to discuss the cost of living increase as on the other contract. Only to defend it, that in the last year we've had our rate of inflation has gone from 1.7 to close to 7.9, and I think it's important to take that into consideration. But first, I would like to suggest that we offer the merit increase of 6%.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
My pleasure. I would like to move that we offer Tammy, Ms. McKay, the base salary increase of 6%.
Again, if you could phrase that as a motion.
I would like to move that we give Ms. McKay a 6% increase in base salary, merit increase.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And apparently you had additional correction?
Yes, I would like to amend the contract to include a 0 to 2% cost of living increase. The City Council shall, in its discretion, consider a cost of living increase to employees' base salary of 0 to 2%. And that's a motion, in the form of a motion.
Please place it in the form of a motion.
I move to amend the contract to read, the City Council shall also, in its discretion, consider a cost of living increase to employees' base salary of 0 to 2%.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. I'm opposed. Any other changes to the contract that people would like to discuss on council? Councilmember Adams?
As we considered then, after amending the previous contract to consider for cost of living increases, I guess I will to be fair, I believe it would be in our best interest. I would make a motion to consider an increase of 2% to the salary for cost of living.
Is that a motion?
I did say I make a motion.
Okay. And Councilmember Bridges, you wish to second that?
Yes, I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1 with myself opposed. Any other changes to the contract? Madam City Clerk, any questions or comments on your behalf?
No, I'd just like to thank the council. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. With that, we will move to our next item, item number 3. Presentation, matters pertaining to annual performance evaluation of City Manager Taylor Tedder. Presentation by Mr. Tedder.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Taylor Tedder, your city manager, and I've been here in the position since August 9th of 2021. I've thoroughly enjoyed serving you, the residents and businesses of Boulder City, and our wonderful city staff since I've arrived. Today, I'll be providing my performance presentation, highlighting items that have been accomplished or are in progress over the past 7+ months, as well as future goals, and I look forward to your feedback and comments. So we'll go ahead and move right into it. The top question I'm always asked is, what does the city manager do? So working with elected officials to not only accomplish your goals, but to formulate approaches to challenges by bringing together resources that produce results, helping you, the governing body, lay out a long-term vision for the community that provides a framework for policy and goals, preparing the city's budget and capital improvement program. As you know, I've been working on that over the past several months pretty heavily, and managing city staff, department budgets, programs, and projects, overseeing the delivery of our services ranging from utilities to permitting, code enforcement, public safety, historic preservation, and much more, developing performance measurement systems and showing the results related to the services that Boulder City provides, and I did provide that annual performance update in January to you. Making grant applications and administering federal, state, and occasionally private sector grant funding, and recruiting and hiring talented individuals and supervising the local government workforce, including key department heads, is another large task. And continuing on with some more responsibilities, I review every agenda item that's submitted for each meeting for accuracy and to ensure that the necessary information is included to share the whole story with you and to our residents. Bringing a community-wide perspective that considers past and future challenges to policy. Helpful institutional knowledge is gained typically through our long-tenured employees and previous meeting minutes and even news articles from the past. And making sure that all are included in building consensus among elected officials, residents groups, and staff by focusing on the needs of the entire community rather than the interests of just a few. It's also promoting equity and fairness, so all of our services have to be fairly and impartially distributed. Administrative decisions like hiring and contracting, I really believe, must be carried out focused on merit rather than favoritism. Developing and sustaining organizational excellence and promoting innovation. I find that empowering our staff to investigate, research, and present new out-of-the-box ideas to me leads to further innovation, and a culture of inclusiveness and allowing that open exchange through all levels of the city helps further that. And then ensuring that our laws and policies are enforced fairly throughout the community and that the government runs ethically and transparently. And I believe that everyone has to be treated the same, which becomes exceptionally clear when we're dealing with matters in the charter or the code. And speaking of the charter, in section 28, I'm empowered by the city council to appoint or remove when necessary all the officers and employees of the city, except for my fellow appointed officials here, and to prepare the annual budget and be responsible for the administration of that budget after the adoption. I'm also tasked with preparing and submitting a report of the finances and administrative activities for each fiscal year. I did provide a presentation at the beginning of this year, as I mentioned previously, related to the activities of the city and how they related back to our defined performance measures. And then our comprehensive annual financial statements serve the purpose of the report of the finances. Keeping the council advised of the financial condition of the city and future needs and recommendations. So that's accomplished through the monthly city manager's report, which is included in your agenda packets at those council meetings, which has continued to become more detailed and enhanced through additional information and organization of the data. And then performing other duties required by the council. So that can be special projects like researching dog park locations, providing information about a program, topic, or responding to a resident request, just to name a few different things. So here's the organizational chart showing my areas of responsibility. Of course, ultimately, we all answer to the voters and the residents of Boulder City, and then I answer to you, my 5 bosses, and my peers are the other appointed officials, and I have 10 immediate direct reports, which includes the 8 department heads, the assistant in my office, and then the communications division manager. And in total, I'm responsible for our 317 employees, of which about 182 are full-time and 135 are part-time. So community stakeholder relations. When I began my tenure as city manager, I made it a point to immediately start meeting with the various organizations and stakeholders throughout the community. And a sampling of those includes our residents, nonprofit organizations like Emergency Aid, Lend a Hand, the Senior Center. I went out to their sites, exploring in depth how they operate and how I can assist in their missions. I've also been heavily involved with the Las Vegas Greater Economic Alliance, meeting with the different school principals with CCSD, going out to Boulder City Waste, checking out their operation and seeing the recycling taking place, meeting with our solar energy partners, the Desert Research Institute, the Chamber of Commerce, working heavily with the Water Authority, and the governor's office, which was very helpful determining our eligibility on broadband with ARPA funds, and their economic development part of the governor's office, which we participated in the EU Day at the Hoover Dam. And I meet monthly with the area city and county managers to discuss relevant issues that we're all facing. I've also met with the National Park Service about potential partnerships, especially in public safety and communications, and sharing each other's messaging, especially when we're dealing with all of the water implications. The Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Reclamation. I've worked with the Boulder City Hospital on issues related to mental health that were brought up by the Nevadans for the Common Good, and worked with them regarding the T-Mobile cell tower about possible relocation of that, which I'll get into in a little bit. I've met with several businesses, including Fisher Space Pen, and then helped businesses like Cornish Pasty and Milo's and the new Beer Zombies establishment entering into the city, helping them with our regulations. The state of Nevada, specifically related to the Railroad Museum, and I'm meeting with the Health District later this week. So, employee relations. The former utilities director had moved on just 2 weeks before I started. So luckily, I was able to recruit and make a new high-quality key hire to the utilities director position, filling that at the beginning of 22. We've developed a new personnel policy and donated leave policy, and it corresponds with the changes to the civil service rules that the council recently adopted. Having those two items clearly differentiated makes it easier to apply it to all employees, because previously it only applied to those in the Civil Service Commission. So this is a personnel policy for all employees, and we're able to utilize lessons learned from the pandemic, which relates to the donated leave policy. So it shows some flexibility with employees that are lacking in leave, and it proved that that policy was needed more than ever. I've completed 9 employee reviews, evaluations so far. When I started, I found that many of the direct reports were due for a performance evaluation, and several have been accomplished while I was on the job and had a chance to learn more about them. But previously to that, I was able to rely on data points from the interim manager, Mr. Mays, and I'll continue doing the performance evaluations because I believe it's great to provide feedback to the employees, to give them goals and ways to do things in a more efficient manner. I was able to hold a leadership team building day for our executive team. We brought in Kim Virtuoso with the All-In Leadership Group, and we were able to increase the level of understanding about each different personality type that we have on our team, and that's been able to enhance the communication between the departments. An employee picnic was held last year as a thank you to the employees for all of their hard work. And I believe continuing events and functions that show the appreciation for employees will continue to foster goodwill and trust. This year, I also brought back the employee holiday gathering and provided the gift of time during the holidays, compliments of you, the council, and myself, which was greatly appreciated by our employees and helped continue to lift morale. I've continued to practice an open door policy while I'm in a lot of meetings. But when I'm not, I always try to be accessible to anyone that wants to speak to me. So many of our directors or staff members will stop by if they need direction or want to share information with me in the morning or late in the afternoon to keep me informed on the inner workings of our various departments and divisions. And then building a collaborative, cohesive executive team. I've been working extremely hard to make sure that our team's dynamic is built heavily on open communication. Department directors provide me with status updates on key projects, which is very helpful. And what I found is that other departments were perhaps unaware of what others were working on until it was ready to be implemented. And making sure that all are aware and have a voice in the process, I've began implementing an inexpensive solution called Smart Sheet, which allows all the department heads access to those project lists, which includes different Gantt charts and timelines to enhance greater communication and knowledge just across the organization. So as you know, there's many ways to get a hold of me, and I keep you as the council informed through various means, especially phone, email, and in person. The agenda briefings are very helpful for all involved. I hold and run those briefings before every council meeting, ensuring that surprises are limited and provides an opportunity to share information with you. The bi-monthly report, I provide that report twice a month, and it's details of what's occurring in each department at that point in time. And then I also provide weekly status updates to you, and it's typically that summary of notable meetings or project updates and important upcoming meeting dates. And then I also hold regular in-person meetings with all of the members of the council to go over policy, implementation, projects, items that the council should be aware of, and I make it a point to share all of the same information with all of the members of council, ensuring that surprises continue to be limited for you. Relations with residents. When I first joined the team here in Boulder City, I wanted to reach out to residents on a regular basis to share projects and initiatives, as well as education about all that the city does, and that was really important to me. So Tedder Talks were launched, and so far I've filmed 7 episodes, and it's a way to engage residents on hot issues throughout the city and bring greater transparency to how things work within the city as an organization. I've also had a steady stream of speaking engagements. Some recently include an engagement with LVGEA, where I provided kind of a update on how things are in Boulder City. And then I've also spoke to the Sunrise Rotary Club, the Chamber, the Romeo Group, and more. And then one other thing that I think it is also relations with residents. So having that one standard schedule of fees in one place so someone can pick it up and look to see how much does that park rental cost or how much is the pool, but it also, it has everything in the city in one place, providing that opportunity. Also for the council to review those fees and charges when we do the annual budget process. I've also remained active in community events. I participated in the Christmas parade with you. The tree lighting, I was behind the Hoover the dog costume, and it was a little hard to see and a little warm, but it was a great experience. And I also served as a Worst Fest guest auctioneer, and also participated in the 9/11 event, and I'll continue participating in more because I believe it's really great to be there in the community and be visible and active. I'm also accessible to meet with residents. I've discussed concerns, positive comments, general and specific questions about our services and initiatives with residents in my office, and I definitely am going to continue to do that. Next up is City Council policy execution. So I've been working with the Bureau of Land Management regarding an ongoing annexation of some parcels. Meetings with community stakeholders. I mentioned earlier the hospital cell tower, working with the hospital. We were able, ultimately their board decided that they did not want the cell tower on the property, so I'm currently working with T-Mobile to try to identify a site that does not affect residents on city property that might be more palatable to the residents of Boulder City. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but the Nevadans for the Common Good, I've been working with some of you to come up with some solutions related to mental health in the community. And this week I'm meeting with the Southern Nevada Health District, and yesterday met with the Clark County School District principals from Boulder City to explore ARPA funding, and helping businesses like the Cornish Pasty that just opened and navigate the process in doing business with the city. Developing water conservation strategies to respond to the challenges facing Southern Nevada and the entire Colorado River Basin. We made a lot of progress on suggestions for turf removal at city facilities, and I've been working on the agreement with the Southern Nevada Water Authority for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, and that will ultimately save 1.3 million gallons per day from coming out of Lake Mead daily. Working with you, the City Council and community, to identify the $21.7 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds meant to respond to the pandemic by supporting local infrastructure projects, helping nonprofits, and supporting our local economy. A comprehensive spend plan will be brought to you along with the operating budget for adoption with an itemized list of all of the projects identified. And then advancing community efforts with the development of Track 350 and funding of the pool replacement. The neighborhood meeting with the developer is on Thursday, and I'll be attending that. And then achieving goals in the strategic plan. I've started providing that presentation to you myself as a way to communicate the team's progress and achievements. Fiscal management. So I serve as the city's chief negotiator in our collective bargaining agreements. We have 8 bargaining units here in Boulder City, and it's in process now. These contracts were last negotiated 5 years ago, and a lot of them have language that's actually 10 plus years old, requiring a more in-depth line-by-line look. The financial year 23 budget process, it's completely underway and have been working very heavily on that. The implementation of the ClearGov budget books, which includes the public-facing portals and promotion of the Socrata, has really helped to improve transparency. The transition that I was able to suggest from AT&T to FirstNet resulted in about $11,000 in savings with our monthly fees that we were paying for our city's cellular devices. And then it also included either low-cost or free phones every 12 to 24 months, which is a huge benefit to the city financially. We currently have about 87 devices, which if you figure $600 a device, that's almost $52,000 in savings just from the devices. And then I'm continuing to explore cost savings of a fleet lease program. I met and shared the concept with the Fleet Advisory Committee last week, and this is all working up to a presentation to you, the council, about a potential multi-million-dollar cost savings there. And then as part of the budget process, I also worked to introduce centralization of our IT purchases and fleet maintenance to one specific budget for greater cost savings, instead of having different departments purchasing the just various IT hardware for their specific departments. That'll all run now through IT to ensure that we have similar brands and types so that we have that uniformity throughout the city. I'm a big believer in professional development for our staff members and hold myself to the same standard. I don't think anyone is ever done learning. So I've continued to participate in the Certified Economic Developer grading, so that gets me points towards my recertification. So grading future certified people on their exams, I'm able to do that virtually, so there's no cost in travel. I did attend the IEDC Leadership Summit and the Nevada League of Cities Conference with you last year, and I also participated in the National League of Cities virtual conference, which allowed me to go on demand and go back and watch sessions relevant to our community, since when you participate in a virtual conference, your schedule ends up filling up quickly. And then I was named a couple months ago an ICMA Credential Manager candidate, which allows me to automatically roll into the full Credentialed Manager designation in the next 14 months. And that involves some stringent plans related to professional development and then reading various books and other leadership principles. And then I also believe that networking and building relationships is another key factor in recruiting top talent, getting results with legislators and building partnerships and consensus with key groups and industry clusters. So now I'm going to talk about some future goals that I have for myself. So I'm really looking forward to creating a focused plan for city-owned facilities and uses. I've already been touring the majority of our buildings and city-owned facilities, and we own many different facilities, and they all have various needs. Some are historic, some showing signs of wear, running out of space, or designed at a time where the needs were much different. So development of that clear strategy will be key in addressing our needs and moving forward. And then I'm also looking forward to what I mentioned previously, the cost-saving measures for fleet management. So whether that's the lease program, looking at further electrification of the fleet, and then looking at savings in gas and maintenance, especially with the police department, since the electric vehicles are the same cost that we're spending now. Complete evaluation of our department structures and recommendation of adjustments. I've been carefully paying attention to our workflow and want to ensure that our structure reflects the most efficient and productive way to accomplish those goals and serving the residents at the highest level possible. And then enhance communication within all of the city departments. Continuing to support staff in their professional development endeavors. I authorized our Public Works Director, Littrell, and Utilities Director, Stubitz, to attend the APWA, the Public Works Association Conference in Mesquite this week, and then Fire Chief Gray just returned from the Fire Excellence Conference last week. And I also want to further identify any cost savings or duplicity in city subscription services and software. Citywide, many times departments have a lot of the same items, but they might be able to team up on using the same things to result in some cost savings. Then a few more future goals. I will always work towards simplifying the flow and organization of our information on our web presence for the public. I think we're doing a great job, but it can always be taken to the next level. So I'm looking forward to ensuring that information is easily accessible and organized in a clear way, making sure that the items can be taken care of, like purchasing parks, ball field membership, things of that nature. And then looking at local economy diversification efforts through our membership in LVGEA, jobs for our residents continue to be created in the metro area, but looking at appropriate businesses while respecting our growth control restraints may enhance the community. So I do actively monitor any kind of requests we get, and then any that might match our community interests, I will provide to you. Successful, timely completion of CIP projects. I think this is really important, recognizing when we must use contractors versus doing projects in-house. I think it's a very important item, and I've been following that very closely so that we can get those projects done. And then continued improvements in transparency efforts. The Socrata platform really opened our finances to the public at their fingertips, and Laserfish also allows our residents to search contracts and historical agendas and minutes and other pertinent city documents. And then C-Click-Fix also allows for service requests to be sent in real time. So making sure I am furthering the transparency, which the ClearGov budget books have really helped with this budget cycle, I think it'll really create additional public trust and education. So thank you so much. I've truly enjoyed leading the team of our exceptional staff here in Boulder City over the past 7+ months. And I look forward to working with you on those future goals in the coming months to further transparency, accessibility, and increasing the level of service to the residents and businesses in the community. And I appreciate the support and insight that I've gained from each of you since I joined the city, and I stand for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. Like the other appointed officers, you came in, of course, during a very difficult transitional period. But I think you adapted really quickly. You took to the community real fast, also to the office without a whole lot of commotion. That's a good thing. From what I have seen and heard from members of staff is that the work environment, the atmosphere, and the overall morale at City Hall has definitely also improved since you've been sworn in. And I think that's very important. You've shown that one can offer professional opinion and candid advice without questioning or demeaning the actions of City Council. More frequent one-on-one meetings have served as great opportunities for you to relay the areas of interest and concern the city is dealing with to me, and for myself to relay areas of concern that I am hearing from the public. Ultimately, I believe your best asset to the city has been the outside perspective that you bring. I think the regular Tatter Talks are a really great means to increase that access to information. As far as areas of focus, as I stated before, you've done well to adapt to our community, and I know that you have made a point to understand our city's roots and its history. But I ask that you also be sure that you research and understand the different moments in Boulder City's history when public participation led to, monumental shifts in our governmental policies, things and how City Hall reacted to those shifts. Why, how and why the growth control ordinance came to be. Why Boulder City residents voted to disallow the city of entering into any new debt over $1 million, why an acre of city-owned land can't be sold without the voters of people. There is context to the history that has led us to where we are today, and so I think it's important to be sure that you don't just so readily dismiss the gripes and complaints of residents. I'm not saying that you do, but I just think it's important that they're heard. Understanding the context of that history, I think, will be really key to a great success in your role. Finally, you've been here long enough now, I think, to see where the city excels and where it still needs some modernization. So if ever you ask the question, why is this done this way? And the answer you get back is because it's how we've always done it. Review that practice.
Certainly.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen?
I would definitely second everything that you said, James, and I'd also like to add a little bit that I appreciate that when you came in, you took initiative to bring new ideas to our community and the transparency that came from those new ideas. Tatter Talks, opening up an avenue for people to listen. I've listened to a couple of them, not all of them. I'll go back. I didn't know there were so many now. And also even down to the fee schedule to make sure that we are, like you said, fair and equitable across. I appreciate that. But mostly I appreciate your initiative. being willing to do something new, to be able to not have to wait for someone to tell you to do something new, taking initiative. I like that. I definitely like the future goals of CIP projects. Deciding if we need to outsource or in-house and what would be the best process, because I think sometimes things like inflation hit, and then what was going to cost, $2 million now will cost 3.5 or something, and what the reasoning was for it not being completed. But most of all, appreciate your willingness to be out in the community and share the city's vision that we have, and to work one-on-one with us very well, just as James said, and take the time to send weekly highlights to keep us informed and to help us whenever we ask. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges?
Thank you. It feels like since you've been here that there's no gaps in communication, that I feel informed, that to me that's really important, that there were several things I was looking to happen after you were appointed, and one was open communication, so there were no questions, that if somebody said something to me out in the community or there was a problem, and I know we talked about, and there's further discussion on say, the issue of the truncated dots, the yellow truncated dots. And to feel that what I said to you was heard, and let's sit down and talk about it and see if there's a solution, rather than I'm really busy with what I'm doing and I'll put this in another file somewhere. And I felt that was important. Transparency. I know that there was a time, and I know this also has to do with the finance department, there was a time that the city manager's report was a list of all the checks you wrote, period. And, and that the only time we ever talked about our finances was when we actually had a budget meeting or approval of the cover. I mean, so in terms of transparency and information, I think you're doing a fantastic job. Like I said, the fact that I've brought things to you to discuss and you take it seriously and you take an action on them, or you get back to me, and to me that's of utmost importance. And there seems to be a positive vibe in City Hall, and all three of you had to deal with stepping into it. You walk, all three of you, and you came in as an unknown. We had known a acting city attorney for a little while. We had known a deputy city clerk for a while. You came in and you were an unknown, and I think and you're a good sport, Hoover. That was really, I had no idea that was you, but yeah, you were a good sport, and that was wonderful, and I really think that carries over into everything. And like we said, I think the most important thing is to continue the communication, continue consistency. That, like you said, everything you say to me when we have our one-on-one, I can be convinced and comfortable in the fact that all five of us have received the same information. And that's very awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Fox?
I think Claudia said it best. There's just positive vibes here at City Hall. And, that, you, Brittany, and Tammy, I think we have the dream team. But you've done an outstanding job as the city manager. I believe your vision aligns with the community here. And your willingness to communicate the consistency, the transparency that you have with everybody, you just don't find that in a whole lot of people. So thank you for that. Your follow-through is top-notch. Your leadership skills, it trickles down. You can see it in all the department heads. It seems like everyone's doing a really great job, and it's just a great flow here at City Hall. You guys are just kicking butt, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. You've been here a shorter period of time than either the city attorney or city clerk, although the clerk has extensive background as the deputy city clerk. One, I do want to give an acknowledgement to the work that Michael Mays did as the interim city manager, which was outstanding. He helped very much in the transition. I'm sure he's been very helpful to you as you came into the position as well. Even in a small city like Boulder City, there's still complex issues that need to be dealt with. It always looks from the outside that everything's wonderful here in Boulder City, and if you live here, you certainly want that to be the case. And I think we're always working towards that goal. I know that's certainly my focus on it. A couple of comments that I have. Input from staff is always important in helping the council make decisions on how to move forward. There have been occasions where personal opinions or biases from staff members that are not supported by the law or facts have been negative on our decision-making process. I know that you're working on that. I think that the information that is coming to council now is far less biased than it has been in the past, and also very much more accurate as far as what we're seeing. I believe that you will continue to work on that, and I think that's extremely significant that the information that comes to council is both accurate and unbiased. You had mentioned some of these projects that have been in the pipeline, some of them for years. What we find with many of these large projects, especially in the utility fund, the estimates are just not correct. As the projects move forward, it's not a matter of inflation. We see cost overruns that are sometimes, in some cases, multiples of the original estimate. That makes it very difficult to make determinations on what we need to do as far as managing those projects and setting out timelines for it. The money is large in the utility fund because whenever you do a project there, it tends to be an expensive project, and we need to have a really high level understanding of what we're looking at so that we are not overburdening our residents, and yet we are getting these necessary projects done. So having a timeline where we know how these projects can be put into place, rather than just saying, well, we'll do this within the 5-year plan. I know you worked on getting, at least it made clearer to some of our residents why it appeared that there was a $20 million surplus in there. It was in there because the projects kept getting budgeted and never implemented. So I appreciate the work that's being done on moving those forward, but what we're starting to see as the projects get implemented are significant changes from what the initial estimates are to what the completed projects are costing. The other thing has been mentioned, you mentioned it as well. We do have a small staff here in Boulder City. In some instances, there's only one person doing one type of work here. It's not reasonable for anyone to expect that one person is going to have all the knowledge and skills necessary to complete the type of functions that are needed. I spoke about it at a recent council meeting. We need to find new ways. We have significant funding that has been provided by the federal government in terms of the American Rescue Plan. We simply cannot do what we always did in the past, as Councilmember Adams had mentioned. We need to look for other ways to get these projects done for the benefit of our residents, for the benefit of the economy, for the benefit of the recovery, all of those things. The federal government has given us 2 year to 4-year window to get the things done. If we did things at the rate that projects have been done in the past, we won't make that schedule. I do appreciate the work you've been doing on updating our information technology, the software, introducing new ideas to some of the departments as to how those types of things can be done. I appreciate your work on following through on initiatives. I had spoken with the hospital CEO about the cell tower issue. I had worked on the wastewater use so that we can come up with a plan that fits Boulder City and not necessarily one that's going to provide for additional growth, but something that does benefit our water conservation at the same time benefiting our community. Working with the schools on how we might be able to use some of that rescue plan money. We had an opportunity to speak with them and maybe get some of those taken care of as well. As you look at economic development, I've certainly seen it with people that come to Boulder City and they look around and they go, man, look at all the stuff you could do here. We can do a lot, and this community has always done a lot for what the community wants to be. And I've seen others come in and say, you know what, this is such a great deal, I'm going to change it completely. This place is going to look totally different when I'm done with it. For 40 years, more than 40 years, people have worked very hard to get this community where it's at now. And change is not always a good thing. The change that occurred here in Boulder City happened a long time ago, and it has gotten us to where we are today, which is a community that I believe our residents truly love. I know you've expressed that same type of respect for what we have here in Boulder City, but it is breakable, and we need to be careful each decision we make how that is going to turn out for the future of our community. I appreciate very much the outreach you've done to organizations in the community, other agencies, our federal agencies here. Again, I think we do have a very different environment with our staff, and that is all to the benefit of the city, our employees, our residents, and the future of Boulder City. So I want to thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Mr. Tedder, anything you would like to add?
Not at this time, unless you wanted to talk about the amendment before you fill out the evaluation, or if you wanted to do that after.
I think we've been doing, this is in regard to the leave policy.
Correct.
And I believe we've been discussing that after we've done the evaluation?
I think that's what we've done. Yes, correct.
Okay.
But thank you again. I truly enjoy it here. And I heard Tammy make the comment she wakes up and she can't wait to get ready to go to work. And I thought I was the only one that was excited to go to work in the morning. So I truly am excited every day coming here, and I really enjoy it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's what Boulder City is about, is wanting to be here. So thank you. All right, then. We are at the point of doing the scoring on the evaluations. We will reconvene then at 6:25 to review that. We are in recess until that time. All right, we are back in session. We have had the scores compiled by Mr. Bolt. I believe the overall aggregate was 4.42. Any questions or comments from members of council? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes. First of all, I would like to suggest two things. One is reviewing the change on item number 3, section 6. The blue employee his representative shall inform all members of the city council of the use of vacation in excess of 2 consecutive business days, vacation being used as soon as practicable, but no later than 2 days after commencement of the use of the vacation time. Employees shall be responsible for tracking use of vacation time using the city's vacation tracking system. I would move to incorporate those changes into section 6, number 1, vacation of his contract.
Other questions or comments? I think, one issue that I have with the wording that Mr. Tedder has proposed here is the advance notice of the use of vacation time. I don't really see how that's addressed here.
This is the existing language that's in my contract currently. For any vacation in excess of 2 consecutive days, I'm fine with it being something beforehand. Mr. Winchester, was there a different standard in the other contracts?
Mr. Mayor, if I might interrupt, Councilwoman Bridges put that in the form of a motion and there was no second.
We can ask for a second then. Anyone wishing to second Councilmember Bridges' motion?
Okay.
Again, I think as the discussion went with the other contracts, the request was still for some advance notice of 1 week when practicable. That doesn't seem to be included in this wording.
1 week is fine with me.
I think Mr. Winchester is comparing some language here.
Yes, if you give me 1 second, please.
I know there is the statement retaining the existing language about, the council may consider or shall consider the request. It would not be possible to consider a request if the time had already started.
Yeah, the language we discussed earlier and the council voted on and agreed to for the city clerk does include notice to city council no later than 1 week prior to the first day of the scheduled vacation. And again, we have the word, where practicable in there. So if the council wants that 1 week, and it sounds like Mr. Tedder's agreeable, we certainly could amend his contract to say that he will provide the same notice that to city council that the city clerk is required to provide.
Are you agreeable with that, Mr. Tedder?
Yes, that sounds fine.
Well, I would make a motion then for the language proposed by Mr. Winchester that it reflect the same language in the city clerk contract.
With the exception, just to be clear, the city clerk contract currently requires the city clerk to notify the finance director as well, but that will not apply to the city manager contract.
Is that acceptable, Mr. Tedder?
Yes.
All right. Is that sufficient, Madam City Clerk? Or are you
Yes.
gonna make me say it?
No, I have it.
Second that?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Any other discussion regarding the contract or the potential for salary increase? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes. Considering the scoring, I would also like to amend. I would like to make a motion to offer Mr. Tedder an increase of 6% of his base salary.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Can you clarify in the motion if that's the merit increase?
Oh, a merit increase. Okay, I think annual performance, okay, I need to look at the next page, I apologize. Okay, I make a motion to consider an increase to Mr. Tedder's base salary of 6%. Is that sufficient?
I believe the city attorney is looking for inclusion of whether it's a merit.
Merit increase to the base salary of 6%, yes.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Councilmember Bridges, do you have another motion?
I have another motion. I would like to make a motion to amend the employment contract to include a cost of living increase between 0 and 2%. So I would make a motion to amend the contract to include a cost of living increase between 0 and 2%.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. I'm opposed. Do you have other motions you would like to make, Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, I do. I would like to make a motion to increase the employees. Let's see. I'd like to make a motion to offer the 2% cost of living increase to the employee's base salary.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion also carries 4-1 with myself opposed. Any other questions, comments, motions? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, the reason, and I don't know if this is something that is applicable, the reason I stumbled over that first motion is the word merit is not included in his contract on Section 4, Item 2, Annual Performance Evaluation and Salary Adjustment. And the other two contracts said discretion consider an increase, and there's no descriptor of the word or the word merit. So that is not in the contract. So should it be left as is? Because to be consistent with the other two contracts
That's a decision for council and whether Mr. Tedder is agreeable.
Are you agreeable to that, Mr. Tedder?
Yes, I'm agreeable to adding the word merit.
Okay, then I would like to make another motion, please, to change the wording, amend the wording in its for the last sentence of this paragraph, beginning with the 2022 evaluation on or around March 22nd, and it says, in its discretion, consider a merit increase to employees' base salary of 0% to 6%.
Do Do we need a reference to the section?
Section 4, Item 2, Annual Performance Evaluation and Salary Adjustments.
Anyone wishing to second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I do have just one question for Mr. Winchester. No issues, right? Okay.
No, as a matter of fact, I think it's advisable to make it consistent with the others.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion unanimous. Any other discussion or motions? Mr. Tedder, again, I think, the position of the council is consistent and complimentary. So appreciate your presentation, and any other comments you would like to make?
Thank you so much. I truly enjoy being here with our excellent team, and really look forward to continuing to work with you. So thank you.
All right, thank you. That will then bring us to item number 4, public comment. Public comment during this period may be on any item. Speakers will have up to 5 minutes to speak. As always, we ask that people be civil and concise in their comments. Anyone in chambers? All right, anyone wishing to call in for public comment, our final public comment period? The phone number is 702-589-9629. This is the final public comment period for the special city council meeting. Anyone wishing to call in, the number 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, were there any emails received?
Yes, we have one general public comment from Sandy Strader.
Please go ahead.
She says she's very disappointed and dissatisfied with the Big Clean 2022 Boulder City event, most specifically with Goodwill, but also the lack of recycling sponsors. Goodwill, we were there at 10:30 a.m. and Goodwill already stopped taking donations. They brought one small truck for an event that was scheduled from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We asked if they were bringing or waiting for an additional truck to come so we could return. The answer was no. Perhaps an additional or alternate donation charity should be used next time. Lack of recycling sponsors. It indicated on the flyer electronics and media would be accepted. However, we brought our items to recycle, not to have them put in the trash to be added to the landfill. wanted the city development team to be aware to better plan for next year. We have been very happy with the sponsors in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, hearing no others for public comment, we will close the final public comment period. Again, I appreciate all the work of staff, and we made it through this, so we should be on our way. Thank you. We're adjourned.